She watched her sister kiss her children's father at the altar. And nobody in that cathedral knew those children existed. 300 PAC members roared with applause. Snow hammered the stained glass. And Emily Hartford stood at the back of Ashford Cathedral. Blonde hair, burgundy cloak, baby on her hip, little girl clutching her leg, and made the most important decision of her life. She didn't scream. She didn't run to the altar. She didn't even cry. She turned around, and she walked out into the Massachusetts winter like a woman who had already said goodbye weeks ago, because she had. The real question isn't why she left. The real question is, how did Josh Smith already know exactly where she was going? Here's what you need to know fast. Josh Smith is the Alpha King, most powerful wolf in the northeastern United States. Runs his pack out of Ashford, Massachusetts like a king runs a country, with iron decisions and zero apologies. Emily Hartford was his secret for 3 years. Not a fling. Not a mistake. 3 years of real, quiet, devastating love. 2 children. A brownstone apartment on Marlowe Street that Josh paid for, but never spent the night in. Not officially. Not in any record that could embarrass him at a council meeting. Liam. 18 months. Blue eyes. Josh's jawline on a baby's face. Clara. 4 years old. Red hair, green eyes, and the unsettling habit of watching adults the way adults watch each other when they think no one's looking. Emily's sister is Vanessa Hartford. If Emily is a healing hand, Vanessa is the blade that makes the wound. Vanessa didn't steal Josh because she loved him. She stole him because she wanted the crown. And she played a longer game than Emily ever saw coming. Now Josh has a queen, and his heirs have vanished. This is where the story gets dangerous. 4 months before the wedding, Emily got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A physical letter, cream-colored envelope, no return address, slipped under the door of the Marlowe Street apartment at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. She almost didn't open it. Liam was teething. Clara had refused to sleep before midnight. Emily had exactly 3 hours before the baby would be up again, and she was running on gas station coffee and the particular exhaustion that belongs only to mothers who are also secrets. But something made her pick it up. Inside was a single line, typed in plain font. He's already chosen. Come to the cathedral on December 14th. He wants you to see. No signature. Emily sat on the kitchen floor with that letter in her hands for a long time. She thought about what kind of person sends a letter like that. She thought about what kind of man wants the woman he's spent 3 years loving to watch him marry someone else. She thought about her sister, Vanessa, who had spent the last 8 months suddenly appearing at every PAC function, every council dinner, every public moment that Emily was carefully excluded from. And then Emily did something that nobody who knows her story ever expects. She didn't fall apart. She got up, put the letter in the kitchen drawer, made herself a cup of tea, and started planning. Because here's what nobody understood about Emily Hartford. She had known this was coming. Not the wedding specifically. Not Vanessa, specifically, though in hindsight that particular betrayal had Josh's fingerprints and Vanessa's ambition written all over it. But the abandonment, the eventual, inevitable moment when Josh Smith would choose power over her. She had known since the night Liam was born. Josh had been there, she'll give him that. He stood in that hospital room in Ashford General at 3 a.m. and held his newborn son with an expression on his face that Emily had never seen before and hasn't seen since. Something cracked open in him that night. Something real. And then his phone rang. PAC business. It's always PAC business. He handed Liam back, kissed Emily's forehead, and walked out. She watched him go and understood, with the cold clarity that comes after 18 hours of labor, that this was the pattern. He would always walk out. The question was only whether she would still be there when he came back. She decided that night that she would not. Not forever. She would stay until she had to go. And she would be ready when that moment came. For months later, the letter arrived. And Emily Hartford was already packed. The bag was at her friend Petra's house, a woman Josh had never met, never tracked, never thought to investigate, because Petra was nobody in PAC terms. A human woman who ran a second-hand bookshop in Rockport and had been Emily's best friend since the 7th grade. The bag contained 3 changes of clothes for each child, a week of non-perishable food, $14,000 in cash, pulled from a separate account Josh didn't know existed, built in increments small enough to never trigger a flag, a car registered under the name Evelyn Morris, A dead woman whose identity Emily had rebuilt with the quiet, painstaking skill of someone who had grown up in a pack and understood that survival sometimes requires paperwork. 2 fake school enrollment documents for Clara. A burner phone with exactly 2 contacts saved. Petra, and a lawyer named Raymond Cole who operated out of Portland, Maine and specialized in custody cases involving pack law. Emily had thought of everything. Everything except one thing. She hadn't thought about the birth certificates. Welcome back to the channel, my dear friends. Before we jump further into the story, please take a moment to subscribe, give this video a like, and tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. Your support means the world to me and helps me bring you even more exciting stories. Believe me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive into the story. December 14th. Emily drove to the cathedral. She told herself it was to say goodbye. To close a door herself rather than have it slammed in her face. She told herself it was for dignity. She was lying. She went because some part of her, the part that had loved Josh Smith in the dark for 3 years, that had whispered his name during labor, that had watched him hold Liam and believed for one foolish second that love was enough. That part needed to see it with her own eyes. Needed the wound to be real. So she bundled the children into winter coats. She wrapped Clara in a dark green jacket with brass buttons. She pulled Liam's hat down over his ears. She put on the burgundy cloak, Josh's favorite. She'd never told him she knew that, but she'd worn it anyway, one last time, because she is human and sometimes we are stupidly, beautifully sentimental even at our own executions. And she walked into Ashford Cathedral. The ceremony had already started. 300 pack members, the most powerful wolves in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, sat in carved oak pews and watched their alpha king prepare to take a queen. The elder of the Eastern Pack, an ancient man named Silas Wren, white-bearded and stone-faced, stood at the altar reading the binding oath in the old language. His voice bounced off the vaulted ceiling like a bell. Josh stood at the altar. God, he was striking. Black coat with gold buttons, military cut, fitted perfectly to the shoulders that Emily had slept against for 3 years. Dark hair, dark eyes, the particular stillness of a man who is used to every room bending around him. And beside him, in ivory silk that cost more than Emily's car, Vanessa Hartford, who had borrowed Emily's mascara at their mother's funeral 6 years ago, who had called Emily her person and her safe place and every other word that sisters used to mean I love you. Vanessa, who had looked Emily in the eye 3 weeks ago over Sunday dinner and said nothing. Not one word. Not a hint. Just smiled and passed the bread. Emily stood at the back. Liam was quiet. He'd fallen into one of those heavy toddler sleeps, head against her shoulder, completely limp. Dead weight in the best possible way. Clara was watching everything. She always watched everything. Emily pressed back against the stone pillar and kept her eyes forward and told herself she could do this. 30 more seconds. Watch it happen. Make it real. Then go. And then Josh looked up. She'll never know why he looked toward the back at that particular moment. Whether it was instinct, alpha senses, the pull of someone who shares his blood sleeping against the shoulder of a woman he'd spent 3 years loving. Whether someone told him. Whether Vanessa had arranged it, she wouldn't put it past her. It doesn't matter why. What matters is that he looked. And he found Emily immediately. No searching, no scanning the crowd. His eyes went directly to her like a compass finding north. For one full second, the world stopped. Emily felt it, that pull. That thing between them that had never had a name because naming it would have made it real, and real things can be used against you in pack politics. She felt it and she thought, now. This is the moment. He stops it now. Josh Smith looked at Emily Hartford. He looked at Liam asleep on her shoulder. He looked at Clara beside her leg. And then he looked back at the altar. The elder continued reading. Josh took Vanessa's hand. That was it. No dramatic gesture. No moment of visible conflict. No crack in the composure. Just a man who made a choice and held it. Emily felt the last living thing inside her chest go quiet. It didn't hurt the way she expected. It was more like the feeling of setting down something very heavy that you've been carrying so long you'd forgotten it was weight. She adjusted Liam on her hip. She took Clara's hand. She turned around and walked out of Ashford Cathedral into the December snow. Behind her, she heard the elder's voice rise in the final blessing. She heard the pack roar. She didn't look back. She cried for 11 minutes in the car. Precisely 11 minutes. because Emily Hartford has always been precise, even in her grief. Then she started the engine and drove north on Route 93. Clara watched Massachusetts disappear through the window and said nothing. She was 4 years old and somehow already understood that some silences are sacred. What would you have done in her place? Watched the man you loved marry your sister, and just walked away? Or would you have burned the whole cathedral down? Gloucester, Massachusetts. 18 miles north of Ashford. Close enough that Emily could still smell the salt off the same Atlantic, but far enough that Josh's pack didn't run regular territory sweeps this far up the coast. Not in winter. Not with a new queen to install and political allegiances to solidify and the 1,000 administrative machinery of an alpha transition grinding forward. The cabin belonged to a man named Tom Briggs, 63, retired fisherman, Petra's uncle, who asked no questions and accepted 3 months' rent in cash with the same disinterested calm with which he accepted the weather. It was small. 2 bedrooms. A wood stove that Clara became inexplicably fascinated with. A back porch that faced the Atlantic with such direct, unobstructed ferocity that the first night, Emily stood there at midnight, the wind pulling at her hair, and screamed into the ocean until her voice was gone. Then she went inside and made oatmeal for breakfast in the morning. The first week was logistics. New phone. New routine. Homeschool materials for Clara ordered under the Evelyn Morris name. Liam's formula and diapers sourced from 3 different stores in rotation, so no single purchase pattern could be tracked. Emily had researched this. She'd researched it the way she'd researched everything in the last 4 months. Quietly, methodically, with the particular focus of a woman who understands that preparation is the only real power available to someone without a crown. She'd read everything she could find on disappearing. On pack tracking methods. On the legal frameworks surrounding pack heirs. Pack heirs. That was the phrase that had started pulling at her, late at night, when the kids were asleep and the wood stove clicked and the ocean roared outside. Pack heirs. She'd thought about it the way you think about a tooth that's starting to ache. Circling it, pressing on it gently, not ready to admit how serious it might be. But she didn't know yet. She didn't know yet what Josh had done. 6 days after the wedding, Emily called Raymond Cole, the Portland lawyer, pack law specialist. Petra's recommendation and Emily's last card. She called from the burner phone, standing on the back porch in the cold because she didn't want the children to hear. Raymond Cole answered on the second ring. He had a voice like old wood, solid, unhurried, slightly weathered. "Ms. Hartford," he said. "I've been expecting your call." Something about that phrasing made Emily's hands tighten on the phone. "You have," she said. "I received some documents," he said. "Forwarded from your Marlowe Street address by your neighbor, a Mrs. Castellano. She said you'd left but had arranged for urgent mail to be redirected." Emily had arranged exactly that. Mrs. Castellano was 74 and hated Josh's lawyers on principle because one of them had once parked in her spot. "What documents?" Emily said. Raymond Cole was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, Emily felt the temperature drop another 5 degrees. "The birth certificates," he said. "Both of them. Amended." She didn't speak. "Ms. Hartford, Emily, I need you to understand what I'm about to tell you, because it changes the legal situation significantly." "Tell me," she said. "Liam and Clara were registered at birth in the standard civil records under Hartford," Raymond said. "You know this. You were there. You signed those documents yourself." "Yes. What you may not know is that under PAC law, there exists a parallel registration system. A second set of records, maintained by the Elder's Office, that documents lineage for purposes of succession and inheritance within recognized PACs." Emily was very still. "Those records," Raymond said, "were filed, apparently at Josh's request, at the time of each birth, under the name Smith." The Atlantic pounded the rocks below the porch. "He filed them as Smith heirs," Raymond said, "which means under the Northeastern PAC Compact of 1987, which Josh's grandfather actually helped draft. Liam and Clara are not simply his biological children. They're his heirs," Emily said. "His legal heirs," Raymond said. "First and second in the line of succession." Which means he can claim them," Emily said. "Under PAC law." "Which means," Raymond said slowly and precisely, "that he may already have the legal right to know where they are." Emily stood on that porch for a long time after the call ended. The ocean didn't care. It kept doing what oceans do. She thought about Josh at the altar. The way he'd looked at her and then looked away. She thought about the letter. He wants you to see. She thought about the fact that this man, this careful, strategic, infuriating man, had registered their children as his heirs at birth. Not when the relationship went cold. Not when Vanessa appeared. At birth. Which meant one of two things. Either Josh had always planned to claim them eventually, regardless of what happened to Emily. Or Josh had always planned to come back for them, and for her. She didn't know which possibility terrified her more. Josh Smith did not send his enforcers. That was the first thing that surprised everyone. When the Alpha King's heirs go missing, the protocol is clear. You deploy the trackers. You activate the network. You send the 6 best enforcers in the pack, wolves who can follow a scent across 3 state lines in a blizzard, and you retrieve what belongs to the bloodline. That's the protocol. Josh didn't follow it. His head enforcer, a hard-faced man named Garrett Voss, 38 years old, 15 years of loyal service, never questioned an order in his life, stood in Josh's study on the morning of December 15th and waited for the command. It didn't come. "Sir," Garrett said, "we have a scent trail from the Marlowe Street apartment." She left within 12 hours of the ceremony. The car she used is registered under a civilian name, but the plates were spotted on a Route 93 camera at. "I know where she went," Josh said. Garrett stopped. Josh was standing at the window, his back to the room, looking out at the Ashford skyline. Snow was still falling. The cathedral was visible from here, its stone towers gray and patient against the white sky. "You know?" Garrett said carefully. "I've known since October," Josh said. The room was very quiet. "Then," Garrett started. "Leave it," Josh said. "Sir, the compact requires that heirs be." "I said leave it, Garrett." It was not a loud command. It didn't need to be. Josh Smith had a particular quality to his quiet, a density to it, like the pressure before a storm, that made raised voices unnecessary. Garrett left it. But Garrett was not the only one paying attention. On the other side of the wall, in the corridor that connected Josh's study to the newly appointed Queen's suite, Vanessa Hartford stood with her ear not quite against the door and her mind moving very, very fast. She was still in her wedding gown. Not because she was sentimental. Because she hadn't slept. Here is what you need to understand about Vanessa Hartford. She is not a villain in the way that stories usually make villains. She did not hate Emily. She did not spend years constructing an elaborate scheme to destroy her sister's life. She just wanted the crown. And she was ruthlessly, completely honest with herself about that fact, which in some ways made her more dangerous than someone driven by hatred, because hatred makes mistakes. Calculation doesn't. She had identified Josh Smith as the most powerful unmated alpha in the northeastern United States 18 months ago. Not because she loved him. Not because she was drawn to him. Because she had sat in a room with her father, a minor pack elder, drunk on cheap wine, ranting about the Hartford family's declining political standing, and understood with the cold clarity of a 29-year-old woman who has been underestimated her entire life that the only way out of irrelevance was upward. And the only person in her immediate orbit with upward to offer was Josh. Emily's Josh. She had not planned for Emily to be in the picture. She had not known about the children until 8 months ago, when a council member's wife, drunk at a fundraiser, had leaned over and said, "Isn't it something, what he keeps hidden on Marlowe Street?" Vanessa had gone home that night and sat very still for a long time. Then she had made a decision. She would not expose Emily. She would not weaponize the children. She would not play dirty. Not because she was above it, but because dirty plays leave fingerprints, and Vanessa Hartford did not leave fingerprints. Instead, she simply made herself more useful than Emily. It wasn't hard. Emily was kept at a distance by design. Vanessa moved into the spaces Emily was excluded from. She learned pack law. She attended the functions. She made herself fluent in the language of power that Emily had never been invited to speak. And when Josh looked at her, really looked for the first time, not as his girlfriend's sister, but as a woman in her own right, Vanessa saw the moment he understood. She could be queen. Emily couldn't. Not because Emily wasn't enough, but because Emily had been kept so deliberately separate from pack life that by the time Josh faced the council's pressure to formalize his succession, Emily was a ghost. She existed in private. She had no standing. She had no relationships with the elders, no political capital, no history in the rooms where decisions were made. Vanessa had all of those things. Josh had made his choice not out of love for Vanessa. He had made it out of political necessity. And Vanessa knew this. She had married a man who did not love her, and she had done it with open eyes, and she told herself this was strength. Standing in the corridor outside his study, listening to him tell his enforcer he already knew where Emily was. For the first time, she wondered if it was something else. She pushed the door open. Josh turned. He did not look surprised. He rarely looked surprised. It was one of the things Vanessa found simultaneously impressive and deeply irritating about him. "How long have you known?" she said. He looked at her for a moment. "Measuring something." "Since October," he said. "You've known where she was going since October," Vanessa said slowly. "And you said nothing. It wasn't relevant to you." "She's my sister. She's the mother of my heirs," Josh said. "That's the relevant part." Something about the way he said it, flat, precise, without apology, made Vanessa understand something she had not fully understood before. Josh Smith had not chosen her over Emily. He had made a political arrangement with Vanessa while never actually letting Emily go. She was not the replacement. She was the cover. "You're going to her," Vanessa said. It was not a question. Josh didn't answer immediately. He turned back to the window. "The council," she started. "The council will do what I tell them," he said. "You just married me," Vanessa said. "Yesterday. You married me yesterday, Josh." He turned then. And for the first time since she had inserted herself into his life 18 months ago, Vanessa saw something on Josh Smith's face that wasn't controlled. It looked like guilt, but it also looked like resolve. And those two things together, on the face of an alpha king, are more frightening than either one alone. "I know what I did yesterday," he said quietly. "And I know what I have to do now." "If you go to her," Vanessa said. "I'm going to my children," Josh said. He walked past her. He picked up his coat, black gold buttons, the same one he'd worn at the altar, from the chair by the door. He left. No guards. No enforcers. No pack escort. Just Josh Smith, alone, walking out of his own estate into the Massachusetts snow. Vanessa stood in his study for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. And she called someone she had hoped she would never have to call. 3 weeks later. The cabin outside Gloucester. Emily had found a rhythm. It surprised her. How quickly children find routine. How powerfully they anchor you when everything else is falling away. Liam needed to eat at 7, noon, and 5. Clara needed 45 minutes of outdoor time before lunch or the afternoon became impossible. The wood stove needed feeding every 3 hours. Emily fed it all. She called Raymond Cole every 3 days from the burner phone. He updated her on the legal situation, which was, in short, deteriorating. Josh's lawyers had filed a motion under the compact. The Pack Elder's office had formally registered a request for the heir's location. Raymond was fighting it, but Pack law moved on its own timeline, and that timeline was not on Emily's side. "How long do I have?" she'd asked on the most recent call. Raymond had paused. "Weeks," he'd said. "Maybe less." She'd hung up and stood on the back porch and looked at the ocean. Clara had come and stood beside her. "Mama," Clara had said. "Are we hiding?" Emily had looked down at her daughter. For years old. Red hair wild in the coastal wind. Those green eyes, Josh's eyes in a different color, somehow the same depth, the same unsettling intelligence. "We're being careful," Emily said. Clara had considered this with the gravity of a small judge. "Is careful the same as hiding?" she asked. "Sometimes," Emily said. Clara nodded like this was a satisfactory answer, and went back inside. The knock came on a Thursday. 8 p.m. The children were both asleep. Emily was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold and Raymond's last legal brief spread open in front of her, trying to understand a clause in the 1987 compact that Raymond had flagged as potentially catastrophic. The knock was not loud. That was the first thing she noticed. Enforcers don't knock gently. Enforcers don't knock at all. They announce, they demand, they make their authority felt before the door opens. Emily had grown up adjacent to pack enforcement. She knew what official presence sounded like. This was 2 knocks. Measured. Quiet. Almost hesitant. Which was, in its own way, more frightening. She went to the door. She did not open it. "Who is it?" she said. Flat. Not a question. Silence for 3 seconds. Then, Emily. One word. His voice. She had not heard his voice in 3 weeks. She had not realized, until this moment, that she had been bracing for it every single day. The way you brace for cold water even when you're the one choosing to jump. She stood with her hand on the doorknob and did not move. Emily, he said again. I'm alone. I know you're alone, she said. I can hear one heartbeat. A beat of silence. Then you know I didn't bring anyone to take them, he said. You could have sent someone ahead, she said. I know how you operate. I didn't. Why should I believe that? Another silence. Longer this time. Because if I wanted to take them by force, he said, you'd have already known. You would have heard them coming before they reached the property line. He was right. She hated that he was right. She opened the door. He looked different, not less powerful. Josh Smith doesn't become less powerful. It's not a thing he's capable of. But something had shifted in how he was carrying it. 3 weeks ago at the altar he had been granite, sealed, composed, performing authority with the flawless ease of someone who has done it so long it has become involuntary. Standing on her porch in the snow, in that black coat, he looked like a man who had not slept well. He looked like a man who had made a decision and was living in the consequences of it. He looked, Emily thought with a fury she immediately suppressed, almost human. Emily, he said. You're not coming in, she said. I know. Then why are you here? He looked at her for a long moment. Snow was falling again, lighter this time, the small precise flakes of deep winter. They caught in his hair and on his shoulders, and he didn't seem to notice. I need you to hear me, he said. I've heard you for 3 years, Josh, she said. I heard everything you said and everything you didn't say. I heard the silence after every council meeting. I heard the pause before you answered when someone asked if you were involved with anyone. I have been very good at hearing you. He didn't flinch. I need you to hear me now, he said. Not then. Now. Behind her, from the direction of the small bedroom, she heard a sound. Small feet on a wooden floor. Then Clara's voice, sleepy and certain. Mama. Is that Papa? The word hit the porch like a stone dropped into water. Josh's expression, that careful, controlled, alpha-neutral expression, cracked. Just for a second. Just enough. Emily saw it. She turned back to him and said the only true thing she had left. You're too late, Josh, she said. You've been too late since December. He said something. The wind off the Atlantic took it before it reached her. But he didn't move. He stood on her porch in the snow and did not move, and that specific, infuriating, heartbreaking stillness was more of an answer than any word he could have chosen. Go back to your wife, Emily said. Vanessa isn't, he started. Don't, Emily said. Don't explain Vanessa to me. Not tonight. Not on my porch. He stopped. I want to see them, he said. Quietly. No entitlement in it. And that absence of entitlement was somehow the most disarming thing he'd said. They're asleep, Emily said. I'll wait. You'll freeze. I'll wait, he said again. Emily looked at him. The alpha king of the northeastern United States, standing in the December snow on a fisherman's rented porch, asking permission. She thought about everything Raymond Cole had told her about the legal situation, about the compact, about the clock ticking. She thought about Clara on the back porch asking if careful was the same as hiding. She thought about Liam's face, his father's jawline on a baby's face, unavoidable and constant as a bruise. She thought about the letter. He wants you to see. She thought about the birth certificates, filed as Smith at the moment of birth, which meant Josh had always known, always planned, always. Why did you file them as heirs? She said. He went very still. From the beginning, she said. Both births. You filed them under Smith. Under the compact. You made them your heirs before you made any of the choices that came after. Why? The snow fell. The ocean roared. Josh Smith looked at Emily Hartford and said something that she had not expected. Something that changed the shape of everything. Because I always knew I'd come back, he said. The silence after that lasted a long time. Long enough for the snow to collect on his shoulders. Long enough for Emily's tea to go from cold to frozen. Long enough for Clara to pad to the doorway in her socks and look up at her father with those ancient green eyes and say, in a voice entirely too calm for a 4-year-old, You took a long time, Papa. Emily let him in. She told herself it was because of Clara. Because her 4-year-old was standing in the doorway in wool socks looking at her father like he was a mathematical problem she had already solved. And turning Josh away in that moment would have required explaining something to a child that Emily herself didn't fully understand yet. So she stepped aside. Josh walked in. He took up more space than the cabin was designed for. Not physically, though he was tall enough that he had to angle slightly through the doorframe. It was the other kind of space. The kind that Alpha Presence occupies without asking. The kind that rearranges the air in a room. Clara watched him with those green eyes. Josh crouched down to her level. He didn't say anything immediately. He just looked at his daughter, this small, red-haired, unnervingly composed creature who had his eyes in the wrong color, and Emily's mouth, and something in the set of her jaw that belonged to neither of them and was entirely her own. "Hi, Clara," he said. "Hi," Clara said. A pause. "You're bigger," he said. "I'm 4 now," Clara said, as though this explained everything, which in her mind it clearly did. "I know," Josh said. "You missed my birthday," Clara said. No accusation in it. Just information, delivered with the precision of a small accountant noting a discrepancy. Josh absorbed this. "I know," he said again. "I'm sorry." Clara considered the apology with visible deliberation. "Okay," she said finally. Then she turned and walked back to her bedroom with the absolute authority of someone who has said everything that needed saying. Emily almost smiled. Almost. She didn't offer him tea. She didn't offer him a seat. She stood in the center of the kitchen with her arms crossed and watched him straighten up from where he'd crouched and turned to face her. "Talk," she said. "You said you needed me to hear you. I'm listening. You have until Liam wakes up." Josh nodded. He didn't sit. He stood near the door, far enough to give her space, close enough that she understood he wasn't leaving. And he talked. "The council gave me an ultimatum in April," he said. Emily said nothing. The elder's office had been pressuring me for 2 years about succession. Who the queen would be. Who would stand beside me publicly. The pack was stable, but stability requires visible structure. A mated alpha without a formal queen is a political liability in a way that doesn't translate well outside pack culture, but inside it. "I understand pack politics, Josh," Emily said. "I've spent 3 years living adjacent to them." He stopped. "You were adjacent," he said quietly. "That's the problem." "No," Emily said. "That was your choice." He accepted that without argument. "It was my choice," he said. "In the beginning, I kept you separate because I thought I was protecting you. The the elders are not gentle people, Emily. The scrutiny that comes with being publicly claimed by an alpha. I could have handled scrutiny," she said. "I know that now." "You knew it then," she said. "You just didn't want to deal with the politics of it." He was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said. The honesty of it was so unadorned that it stopped her. No excuse wrapped around it. No qualifier. Just yes. "By the time the council gave me the April ultimatum," he said, "I had kept you separate for so long that introducing you as a candidate for queen would have required. Admitting you'd hidden your children from your own pack for 4 years," Emily said. "Yes. And that was too costly." "Politically?" "Yes. So you chose Vanessa." He looked at her steadily. "Vanessa was already in the rooms," he said. "She'd built relationships with every elder on the council. She understood pack law better than most of my own advisors. She was useful," Emily said. "Yes. And I wasn't." "You were kept from being useful," Josh said. "By me. Deliberately. And then I used the distance I'd created as the reason I couldn't choose you." "That is," he stopped. Something moved across his face. "That is the thing I have to live with." The wood stove clicked. Outside, the Atlantic kept its cold, indifferent commentary. Emily uncrossed her arms. Not because she was not softening, but because the posture had started to feel performative, and Emily Hartford does not perform. "What did you think was going to happen?" she said. "When you watched me walk out of that cathedral, what did you think I was going to do?" "I thought you'd go to Petra's," he said. Emily blinked. "You know about Petra," she said. "I've always known about Petra," he said. "Rockport. The bookshop. I've known since year 1. And you never." "I never touched that," he said. "That was yours. The one piece of your life that was entirely yours and not connected to me. I never put anyone near it." Emily stared at him. "Then you knew I had an exit," she said slowly. "I knew you were smart enough to build one," he said. "I was counting on it." "You were," she stopped. "What does that mean, Josh?" "You were counting on it." He looked at her. "And this is where it gets complicated. This is where the shape of everything starts to shift." "Sit down," Josh said. "I'm fine standing." "Emily, please sit down." Something in his voice made her sit. He pulled a chair from the table and sat across from her. Closer than felt safe, but she held her ground. In October, he said, when I told Garrett I already knew where you were going, it wasn't because I'd had you followed. Then how? Because I told you, he said. Emily went absolutely still. 3 years ago, Josh said. The night Liam was born. You remember what I said before I left the hospital? She remembered. If anything ever happens, if this ever becomes too much, go north. Go to water. Go somewhere I can find you without anyone else being able to. She had thought it was a meaningless comfort. The kind of thing men say when they are overwhelmed by emotion and about to walk out of a room. She had not thought it was a plan. You knew I'd come to the coast, she said. I knew you'd go somewhere the ocean would tell you things, he said. You've always needed moving water when you're thinking. She stopped. That's not. You can't have planned this from that far out. I didn't plan it, he said. I prepared for it. There's a difference. What's the difference? Planning means I wanted this to happen, he said. Preparing means I knew it might, and I refused to let you disappear somewhere I couldn't find you. Emily looked at him for a long moment. You filed them as heirs at birth, she said. Yes. Not to claim them against me. He shook his head. Then why? Because, Josh said, under the compact, a registered heir has protections that a civilian child doesn't. Legal standing. PAC resources. The right to counsel representation. The right to, he paused. The right to challenge a succession decision. Emily heard the words. She heard them individually. And then she heard what they meant together. You gave them legal standing, she said slowly, to challenge your succession. To challenge any succession decision made without their interests being represented, Josh said. Including, especially, the decision about who becomes queen. The room was very quiet. Josh, Emily said carefully, are you telling me that you registered our children as your heirs specifically so that they would have the legal right to contest your marriage to Vanessa? He held her gaze. I'm telling you, he said, that when the council forced my hand in April, I made a choice I couldn't unmake publicly. But I made sure that choice had a door in it. A door, Emily repeated. A legal mechanism, he said. That could be opened. By the right person. At the right time. By me, Emily said. By Raymond Cole, Josh said. Acting on behalf of Clara and Liam Smith, registered heirs under the Northeastern PAC Compact, who have a legal right to petition the Elders' Council for a review of the succession arrangement within the first year of. Stop. Emily held up her hand. He stopped. She stood up from the chair. She walked to the kitchen counter and stood there with her back to him for a moment. Then she turned around. You engineered a legal exit from your own marriage, she said. Before the marriage even happened. Using our children's legal standing. Yes. Without telling me. If I'd told you, you'd have had to know the plan. And if you knew the plan, you'd have been in legal jeopardy as a knowing party to a. Don't, Emily said. Don't make it sound like you were protecting me. You didn't tell me because you weren't sure it would work. You weren't sure you'd go through with it. You filed those papers and married Vanessa and sent me to that cathedral with a letter and watched me walk out. And you were not completely sure, until this moment, that you were actually going to come here. The silence was long. No, Josh said finally. I wasn't completely sure. What made you sure? He looked at her. Clara's birthday, he said. Emily blinked. November 3rd, he said. I sat in my study in Ashford and thought about Clara turning 4 without me, and I understood that there was no version of my life in which that was acceptable. Not for another year. Not for one more birthday. Emily felt something move in her chest. She pressed it down hard. This was not the moment for that. There's something you haven't told me, she said. He looked up. Vanessa, Emily said. You told me this whole plan, but you haven't told me what Vanessa does when she finds out. Josh's expression shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. Josh, Emily said. What does Vanessa do? 3 weeks earlier. The night of the wedding. After Josh left his study and walked out into the snow, Vanessa stood alone and made a phone call. The number she dialed was not saved under a name. It was memorized. It rang 4 times. A man answered. His name was Dorian Ashby, 44 years old. Former PAC elder from the Western Massachusetts Territory. Removed from his position 6 years ago under circumstances that the PAC officially described as a voluntary resignation for personal reasons, and that everyone who knew anything understood to mean something considerably darker. Dorian Ashby had been Josh Smith's most dangerous political enemy for a decade. And Vanessa Hartford had been feeding him information for 8 months. Not because she hated Josh. She didn't hate Josh. Hate requires a kind of emotional investment that Vanessa had never made. She had used Dorian the same way she used everything, as a tool. A counterweight. A contingency plan for the contingency plan. Because Vanessa Hartford had not risen to the position of queen by being someone's backup option. And somewhere in the last 8 months, watching Josh be careful and calculated and controlled, she had begun to understand that she might be exactly that. His backup option. The politically viable solution while Emily was the real one. And Vanessa Hartford did not accept being the backup. He's going to her, she told Dorian. When? Dorian said. I don't know. Weeks. Maybe days. And the children? They're with her. Gloucester, I think. Or further up the coast. You think? I don't have the exact location, Vanessa said. He didn't tell me. But if you have people watching the coastal routes north of Ashford, we can find them, Dorian said. A pause. What do you want in return? Dorian said. Vanessa had thought about this. The marriage stands, she said. Regardless of what Josh tries to do with the heir petition, the marriage stands. The council owes you 3 votes. 4, Dorian said. 3, Vanessa said flatly. You're not negotiating with someone who needs you, Dorian. I'm the queen. I'm giving you the location of the Alpha's heirs and the knowledge that he's about to attempt a legal maneuver that would destabilize the entire succession. That information is worth 3 votes and your complete discretion. Dorian was quiet. Done, he said. Vanessa hung up. She stood in the corridor of Josh's estate, her estate now legally, whatever that meant, and looked at her own reflection in the dark window. She thought about Emily. Emily with her blonde hair and her burgundy cloak and her 2 children and her quiet, devastating dignity as she walked out of a cathedral. Vanessa had not felt guilty about the wedding. She felt, for the first time, something adjacent to guilt now. She pressed it down. Dorian Ashby was a contingency. She had not told him to hurt anyone. She had simply given him information. What he did with it was his business. She told herself this very firmly. She almost believed it. Back to the cabin. Vanessa called someone, Emily said. That's what you're not telling me. Josh's jaw tightened. Yes, he said. Who? Dorian Ashby. The name landed in the room like a match near gasoline. Emily knew that name. Every wolf-adjacent person in the northeastern United States knew that name. Dorian Ashby was the reason 3 Pack families had relocated out of western Massachusetts in the span of 2 years. Dorian Ashby was the reason Josh had doubled his perimeter security 4 years ago. Dorian Ashby operated in the space between Pack law and Pack violence, where the rules were written by whoever was still standing. How do you know she called him? Emily said. Because Garrett intercepted the call, Josh said. 40 minutes after I left the estate. Garrett told you? Garrett called me when I was an hour from Gloucester, Josh said. He has Dorian's lines flagged. Has for years. Emily looked at him. And you came anyway, she said. I drove faster, he said. Josh. She was already moving toward the bedroom. If Dorian has people on the coastal routes. I swept the perimeter before I knocked, Josh said. There's no one within 2 miles. Yet, Emily said. Yet, he agreed. They looked at each other. This was a different kind of moment than the ones before it. This was not about love or betrayal or 3 years of careful, painful choices. This was about 2 children asleep in the next room and a man named Dorian Ashby, who did not distinguish between legal and not. We need to move, Emily said. Yes, Josh said. Tonight. Within the hour, he said. I have a location. No, Emily said immediately. Your location. Your people. I'm not. Emily. I am not walking into a Pack safe house with my children and handing you leverage, she said. Not tonight. Not before I've talked to Raymond. Raymond Cole can't protect you from Dorian Ashby, Josh said. And you can, she said. You, who is currently legally married to the woman who just called him? The silence was sharp. Josh looked at her. Yes, he said simply. I can. Give me one reason to believe that. He reached into his coat. He pulled out a document. He set it on the kitchen table between them. Emily looked at it. It was a petition. Filed that morning, under the seal of the elder's office, by Raymond Cole on behalf of Clara Smith and Liam Smith, registered heirs under the Northeastern Pack Compact. Petitioning for a formal council review of the Alpha succession arrangement. Signed by Raymond Cole. Countersigned, And this was the part that stopped Emily's breath. Countersigned by Garrett Voss, Josh's head enforcer. Garrett, Emily said. He's been with me for 15 years, Josh said. He understood what was at stake. He countersigned a petition that challenges his own alpha's marriage. He countersigned a petition that protects his alpha's heirs, Josh said. Which is, under the compact, his highest obligation. Emily stared at the document. This had not been done tonight. The filing date was 3 days ago. You filed this before you came here, she said. I filed it before I was sure I could get here safely, he said. So that if something happened to me on the way, if Dorian got to me before I got to you, the legal mechanism was already in motion. Emily put her hand flat on the document. She thought about Raymond Cole, who had been expecting her call. She thought about the way Raymond had said, "I've been expecting your call." Not because Petra had told him. Because Josh had already called. You called Raymond first, she said. 2 weeks ago, Josh said. Before you came to me. I needed the legal protection in place before I showed up on your porch, he said. Because showing up on your porch without it would have been romantic. And the situation required more than romance. Emily looked at him for a long moment. The wood stove clicked. Outside, a branch cracked in the wind. Both of them went still. Just a branch. But the clock had started. Wake the children, Josh said quietly. Emily was already moving. Clara woke immediately. She always did, like a light switch. Liam took 45 seconds and a specific song Emily had sung since his birth, a wordless low humming that she'd started in the hospital and never stopped. She dressed them in the dark, fast, practiced. Go bags were already packed, had been packed since the night she arrived. She came back into the kitchen with a child on each hip. Josh was standing at the window, looking out at the dark. He turned when he heard her. He looked at Liam. Liam looked back at him with the blue-eyed, serious assessment of a very small person encountering something unfamiliar. Then Liam reached out one hand toward Josh. Just reached out. Opened his fist. Waiting. Josh crossed the room in 3 steps and took his son's hand. They left the cabin at 9:47 p.m. Emily took the go-bags. Josh carried Liam. Clara walked between them, holding both their hands, with the complete composure of a child who had decided that this was simply what happened next. The snow was falling again. The ocean was loud. They walked to Josh's car, not his usual vehicle, Emily noticed. A plain dark SUV, no pack markings, nothing that identified it. He'd thought of that too. She hated how much he'd thought of. She hated more how much of a relief it was. They drove north. No one spoke for the first 20 minutes. Then Clara, from the back seat, in the particular tone she used when she was delivering a verdict. Papa, she said. Yes, Josh said. Are we still hiding? Josh glanced in the rearview mirror. Then he looked at Emily. Emily looked back at him. No, Josh said. Not anymore. Clara absorbed this. Good, she said. I'm tired of hiding. She put her head on Emily's shoulder and went back to sleep. And in a house in western Massachusetts, Dorian Ashby was already moving. And in an estate in Ashford, Vanessa Hartford was staring at a petition document that had just been delivered to her door. And somewhere between all of it, between the king who had built a door into his own marriage, the sister who had built a weapon out of her betrayal, and the woman who had been precise even in her grief, the real war was just beginning. Dorian Ashby did not look like a dangerous man. That was, historically, his greatest advantage. He was 61 years old, silver-haired, wore reading glasses on a chain around his neck, drove a sensible gray sedan, attended church every Sunday in Northampton, not because he believed in anything, but because it kept him visible in the kind of community where visibility is its own alibi. He looked like a retired professor. He operated like a siege engine. When Vanessa's call came through, Dorian had been sitting in his kitchen eating soup. He'd finished the soup before he made a single move. That was how he operated. Never reactive. Never rushed. Rushing was for people who hadn't thought far enough ahead. He'd spent 6 years thinking ahead. 6 years since Josh Smith had engineered his removal from the Elders' Council with the kind of surgical precision that left no fingerprints and no grounds for legal challenge. 6 years since Dorian had sat in his sensible gray sedan outside the Ashford Council chambers and understood that the only thing left between him and irrelevance was patience. He had been very patient. And now the Alpha King was running north on a coastal highway with his illegitimate heirs and a woman who didn't understand yet that she was the most valuable piece on the board. Dorian made 3 calls. The first was to a man named Pell, no first name, just Pell, who handled the kind of retrieval work that didn't appear in any official pack record. Coastal highway north of Gloucester, Dorian said. Dark SUV. No pack markings. 2 children. Find them. Don't touch the children. And the woman? Pell said. Bring her, Dorian said. Carefully. The second call was to a council elder named Whitmore, the oldest sitting member, 83 years old, deeply traditional, and deeply uncomfortable with the idea of an alpha using his heirs as legal weapons against his own succession. Dorian knew this because Whitmore had told him, at a dinner 6 months ago, after 2 glasses of wine. The petition was filed this morning, Dorian told Whitmore. Smith's own enforcer countersigned it. The children are registered heirs petitioning for a succession review. If the council accepts the petition, it destabilizes everything, Whitmore said. It destabilizes Josh, Dorian said. The council itself would be fine. The council would simply need new leadership. Whitmore was quiet. What are you suggesting? He said. I'm suggesting, Dorian said, that the council has grounds to call an emergency session. Tonight, on the basis of the petition filing and the alpha's apparent abandonment of his post on the day following his formal mating ceremony. He left, Whitmore said. Within 24 hours of the binding, Dorian said. Alone. No notification to the council. No designated authority in his absence. Under pack law, an alpha who abandoned his post within the binding period without designating a proxy forfeited certain emergency powers to the council. Dorian knew this because he had helped write that clause 30 years ago, when he was still on the right side of the room. The third call was the most important. He dialed a number he had not used in 2 years. It rang once. I wondered when you'd call, said the voice on the other end. Female. Precise. Unhurried. You've seen the petition, Dorian said. It was delivered to my door 40 minutes ago, the voice said, along with a note from Raymond Cole explaining the timeline. And a pause. What do you want, Dorian? The same thing I've wanted for 6 years, he said. Josh Smith removed from his position. And in exchange? The marriage stands, Dorian said. Your position as queen is not only preserved, it's strengthened. With Josh gone, the council needs a stable figurehead. You're already mated. You're already in the residence. You know the law. You're useful, the voice said. A beat. Yes, Dorian said. Another pause. Longer. You have people moving on the highway, the voice said. It was not a question. Dorian said nothing. If something happens to those children, the voice said, I will burn everything you've built to the ground. Do you understand me? Not Josh. Me. Personally. The children won't be touched, Dorian said. The woman? Silence. Dorian, the voice said. The woman is my sister. The word landed differently than he'd expected. Not soft. Not sentimental. Just precise. Like a boundary being drawn in concrete. She won't be harmed, Dorian said carefully. She won't be touched at all, the voice said. Or we're done. Dorian recalibrated. Agreed, he said. The line went dead. Dorian sat in his kitchen and looked at his empty soup bowl. He thought about the voice on the phone. He thought about the way she'd said my sister. Not Emily. Not her. My sister. He had been playing chess for 6 years. He was beginning to wonder if Vanessa Hartford had been playing something else entirely. Josh saw the headlights at 10:23 p.m. 2 vehicles, hanging back far enough to be casual, close enough to be deliberate. He didn't say anything immediately. He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and ran the calculation. Distance to the next exit, road conditions, the weight of the SUV with 4 people and go bags, Clara asleep against Emily's shoulder, Liam strapped into the center seat between them. We have company, he said. Emily looked in the side mirror. How long? She said. Since the Route 128 interchange, he said. They're Pell's people. Dorian moved fast. He always does, Josh said. It's his best quality. Emily looked at the children. Liam was asleep. Clara was not. She was doing that thing she did, pretending to sleep while absorbing everything. Emily could tell by the particular stillness of her. Too deliberate, too arranged. Clara, Emily said quietly. Clara said. Still pretending. Stay very still for me, okay? Like we practiced. A pause. The car game. Clara said, eyes still closed. The car game, Emily confirmed. They had a car game. Emily had invented it 8 months ago, when she first started preparing and framed it as exactly that, a game. Stay still, stay quiet, count the streetlights. Whoever counts the most wins. She had hoped they would never need it. I see 12 already, Clara murmured. Good girl, Emily said. She looked at Josh. Options, she said. 1, Josh said. I call Garrett. Where is Garrett? 30 minutes behind us, Josh said. He's been running parallel since Gloucester. You brought backup, Emily said. I brought Garrett, Josh said. There's a difference. What's the difference? Backup follows orders, Josh said. Garrett follows me. He picked up his phone. Dialed. 1 ring. I see them, Garrett said without preamble. Pell, Josh said. Confirmed. 2 vehicles. For men per vehicle, best guess. Can you cut them off before the Ipswich exit? Already moving, Garrett said. But Josh. What? There's a 3rd vehicle, Garrett said. Stationary. Parked at the Ipswich exit right now. Waiting. Josh's jaw tightened. Dorian's running a box, he said. Yes, sir. Emily had been listening. He's boxing us in, she said. Behind and ahead. Standard retrieval formation, Josh said. Cut off forward momentum, force a stop, surround. So we don't go to Ipswich, Emily said. No. Where do we go? Josh was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, Garrett. The Rowley Access Road. A pause from Garrett's end. That's private pack land, Garrett said. Northern boundary. I know what it is, Josh said. If you cross onto pack land tonight, given the compact filing, given that you left without designating a proxy. I know the implications, Josh said. Dorian will have grounds to call an emergency council session, Garrett said. Tonight. He'll say you abandoned your post and then retreated to pack land with unregistered civilians and... They're not unregistered civilians, Josh said. They're registered heirs. The moment I bring them onto pack land, the compact's protective provisions activate. Silence from Garrett. That's, Garrett started. Legal, Josh said. Barely, but legal. It will force an emergency council session, Garrett said. Yes, Josh said. Tonight, before Dorian has time to prepare his argument. Before Whitmore has time to solidify opposition votes. Before anyone has time to do anything except react. A long pause. You're forcing the confrontation, Garrett said. I'm choosing the timing, Josh said. There's a difference. Emily was looking at him. You're bringing us to Ashford, she said. I'm bringing you to Packland, he said. Where the compact protects the heirs, and by extension the heir's primary guardian. Me, Emily said. You, he said. Josh, she said carefully. I have spent 3 weeks building a life away from Ashford specifically, so that I am not standing in a room full of pack elders with no legal standing and no. You have legal standing, he said. You're the primary guardian of 2 registered pack heirs. Under Article 7 of the Compact, that gives you protected party status in any council proceeding involving. I know what Article 7 says, Emily said. Raymond walked me through it. Then you know that protected party status means the council cannot take any action against you, remove the children from your custody, or compel your testimony without a supermajority vote of 7 of 9 elders, Emily said. Yes, I know. Dorian has 3 votes, Josh said. Confirmed. Garrett has been counting. He had 3 votes before your marriage, Emily said. You just gave Vanessa a reason to hand him more. Josh was quiet. Emily watched his face in the glow of the dashboard. How many votes does Vanessa control? She said. Josh said nothing. Josh. How many? 2, he said. Potentially 3. Which means if Vanessa and Dorian are aligned. They have 6, Josh said. Potentially. And you need a supermajority of 7 to remove protected party status, Emily said. So if they have 6, they're 1 short, Josh said. And the 9th elder is Silas Wren. The elder who had performed the wedding ceremony. The oldest member, Emily said. The most traditional. The one who cares most about the integrity of the compact, Josh said. And the one who will not, under any circumstances, vote to expose registered pack heirs to political risk. You're betting everything on Silas Wren, Emily said. I'm betting on 40 years of watching Silas Wren choose the compact over politics every single time, Josh said. The headlights behind them were getting closer. Clara was counting streetlights in a murmur, so quiet it was almost a breath. Liam slept. If you're wrong about Silas, Emily said. I'm not wrong about Silas, Josh said. But if you are, he glanced at her. Then we go to plan B, he said. What's plan B? A beat. I'm working on it, he said. Emily looked at the road ahead. She thought about Raymond Cole and his weathered voice. She thought about Petra in her bookshop in Rockport, who didn't know any of this was happening. She thought about the Evelyn Morris car registration and the $14,000 and the months of quiet, meticulous preparation. She thought about Clara counting streetlights. She thought about Liam reaching his hand toward his father in the dark. She thought about Josh saying, "I always knew I'd come back." She thought about the 11 minutes she'd cried in the parking lot outside Ashford Cathedral and how she'd counted them, and how the precision of her own grief had felt like the only thing she could control. She thought about what it cost to trust someone who had already broken you. She thought about what it cost not to. Take the Rowley access road, she said. Josh exhaled. One breath. Controlled. But she heard what was in it. He took the exit. Ashford Pack Council Chamber. 11:58 p.m. 9 chairs around a stone table that had been in this room since the chamber was built in 1923. The walls were dark wood. The ceiling was vaulted. The lighting was the specific amber of old institutions that have learned to make gravitas look effortless. 7 of the 9 chairs were occupied. 2 were empty. Josh's chair, the Alpha's seat at the head, and the chair to his left, which belonged to the Alpha's formal consort. Vanessa's chair. She was not there yet. Dorian Ashby sat 3 seats down, his reading glasses on his nose, a stack of documents in front of him, looking exactly like a retired professor reviewing student papers. Silas Wren sat at the far end, white-bearded, motionless, with the particular stillness of someone who has attended so many emergency midnight sessions that the urgency has long since stopped reaching him. Whitmore sat beside Dorian, visibly agitated. The other 4 elders arranged themselves in the careful geometry of people who have not decided yet which way to fall. Garrett Voss stood at the door. Not as an elder, he had no seat at this table. As the Alpha's enforcer and co-signatory of the petition, he had the right to be present. He used it. The door opened. Josh walked in. He had taken exactly enough time to change his coat. Emily was in a separate room, the protected party suite, which the compact required the council to provide, which Garrett had prepared with the particular efficiency of a man who had been planning this night for longer than anyone knew. Clara and Liam were with her. Clara had asked for hot chocolate. Garrett had produced hot chocolate. Emily had looked at him and said, "You knew about all of this from the beginning, didn't you?" Garrett had looked at the floor. "Ma'am," he'd said. "That's a yes," Emily said. "Ma'am," he'd said again, which was somehow worse. Josh took his seat at the head of the table. He looked at each elder in turn. Not a scan, a look. Deliberate. Holding each gaze for exactly long enough. "Thank you for convening," he said. "You're thanking us," Whitmore said. "You left your post 12 hours after your binding ceremony." "I located my registered heirs," Josh said, "who were in potential danger due to a threat originating from within this city." A silence. "What threat?" Silas Wren said. First words he'd spoken. Voice like gravel wrapped in silk. "Dorian Ashby dispatched a retrieval team to intercept my heirs on the coastal highway tonight," Josh said. At approximately 10 p.m., every head turned to Dorian. Dorian did not adjust his glasses. Did not shift in his seat. Did not reach for his water glass. "Alleged," he said pleasantly. "Garrett," Josh said. Garrett produced a phone. Played 11 seconds of audio. Dorian's voice. Unmistakable. "Find them. Don't touch the children." The chamber was very quiet. Dorian looked at the phone. Then he looked at Josh. And something moved through his eyes, not fear. Dorian Ashby had not felt fear in a long time. Recalibration. "The petition," Dorian said, pivoting without missing a beat, and even Josh had to admit privately it was impressive, was filed without the council's prior knowledge. The Alpha used his heir's legal standing as a political mechanism against his own succession arrangement. That itself represents a. "The petition was filed by the heir's legal representative," Josh said, "on behalf of Clara and Liam Smith, as is their right under Article 4 of the Compact. Article 4 requires." "Silas," Josh said. The old man looked up. "You wrote Article 4, Josh said. 41 years ago. Tell them what it requires." Silas Wren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, with the careful precision of a man who has memorized every word he has ever written, Article 4 requires that registered heirs have unimpeded access to legal representation and counsel petition rights from the moment of registration. Any interference with those rights, including coercive retrieval actions, constitutes a violation of the compact punishable by. We weren't retrieving the heirs, Dorian said. We were. Your voice is on the recording, Dorian, Silas said mildly. Silence. Whitmore was looking at Dorian now with an expression that had shifted considerably from the one he'd worn 2 hours ago on the phone. The 4 undecided elders were leaning, not dramatically, not obviously, but Emily would have seen it. The weight in the room was moving. There is still the matter, Dorian said more carefully now, of the Alpha's marriage. The binding ceremony was performed. The succession arrangement was formalized. The petition cannot simply. The door opened. Everyone turned. Vanessa Hartford walked in. She was wearing black. Not mourning black, not performatively. Just black, because it was midnight and she'd dressed for the cold. But the effect in the amber light of the council chamber was striking. She walked to her chair. She sat down. She set her hands flat on the table and looked at Dorian Ashby. You sent people after my sister, she said. I sent people to retrieve. My sister, Vanessa said. And her children, who are also my nephew and niece, who are also, as has just been established, registered PAC heirs operating under compact protection. Dorian looked at her with the eyes of a man reassessing a piece he thought he controlled. We had an arrangement, he said quietly. We had a conversation, Vanessa said. I gave you information. I did not authorize an interception of my family on a public highway. You called me, Dorian said. I called you to protect my position, Vanessa said. Not to put my sister in a car being followed by Pell's people in the middle of the night. She looked at Josh. Something passed between them, not warmth, exactly. Not forgiveness. Something more complicated than either. Recognition, maybe. 2 people acknowledging that they had used each other and both understood it. I want to address the petition, Vanessa said. The chamber went very still. Vanessa, Dorian started. I'm addressing the council, she said. Not loudly. Just with the absolute certainty of a woman who knows which room she's in and exactly what she's entitled to say in it. Not you. She looked at Silas Wren. The petition requests a review of the succession arrangement, she said. I am the succession arrangement, and I am telling this council, formally and on the record, that I do not oppose the review. The silence lasted a long time. Whitmore looked like he'd been struck. Dorian looked like he was solving a problem he hadn't known existed. Silas Wren looked at Vanessa Hartford with an expression that might, in another man, have been respect. You understand what a review entails, Silas said. I understand that the binding ceremony created a legal arrangement, Vanessa said. I also understand that legal arrangements are reviewable under conditions that the compact specifies. And I understand, she paused, that what I said to Dorian Ashby tonight constitutes a material breach of my duty as consort. Because I gave information about the Alpha's heirs to a known hostile party. The word breach sat in the room like a stone in water. Under the compact, a consort who committed a material breach of duty within the binding year created automatic grounds for council review of the succession arrangement. Vanessa had just confessed to it. Publicly. On the record. Josh was looking at her. Vanessa did not look back at him. She was looking at the table. Why? Silas said. Not accusatory. Genuinely asking. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Because, she said, I am very good at wanting things. And I am very good at getting them. She paused. I am not good at wanting the right things. She looked up then. And she looked at Josh. She's been the right thing for 3 years, Vanessa said. Everyone in this room knows it. Everyone in this city knows it. I knew it when I made my play and I did it anyway because... She stopped. Because I wanted the crown more than I wanted to be honest. The chamber was completely silent. I'm being honest now, she said. Silas Wren looked at the table for a long moment. Then he looked at Josh. The petition for review, Silas said, has grounds. Dorian opened his mouth. Sit down, Dorian, Silas said. Without even looking at him. Dorian sat. We will convene a formal review session in 72 hours, Silas said. In the interim, the heirs and their primary guardian are under full compact protection. No retrieval action. No legal motion. No contact without their consent. He looked at Dorian over his reading glasses. From anyone. Dorian said nothing. Dorian, Silas said. The recording Garrett produced constitutes a prima facie violation of Article 4. We will be addressing that separately, at length. For the first time in 6 years, Dorian Ashby looked like a man who had played the wrong piece. The session closed at 1:17 a.m. Garrett appeared at the protected party suite 20 minutes later. He knocked. Emily opened the door. Both children were asleep. Liam on the small couch, Clara in the armchair with her knees tucked up, having apparently decided that the armchair was superior to the cot provided. "It's done," Garrett said. "For tonight." Emily looked at him. "And Vanessa?" she said. Garrett was quiet for a moment. "She confessed to the breach," he said. "On the record." Emily stared at him. "She did it voluntarily?" Emily said. "Yes, ma'am." Emily leaned against the doorframe. She thought about her sister. About Sunday dinner and past bread and a smile that had hidden everything. About the call to Dorian Ashby. About a woman who was very good at wanting things. And who had, in the end, wanted something more than the crown. "Where is she?" Emily said. "Down the hall," Garrett said. Emily looked at her sleeping children. She looked at Garrett. "Watch them," she said. She walked down the hall. She knocked. The door opened. Vanessa stood there in her black coat, looking, for possibly the first time in Emily's memory, like she didn't know what came next. They looked at each other. Two Hartford sisters in the Ashford Pack Council building at 1 in the morning. "You called Dorian," Emily said. "Yes," Vanessa said. "And then you confessed it to the council." "Yes." "Why?" Vanessa looked at her for a long moment. "Because he sent people after you," she said. "And I told him where you were. You didn't know he'd." "I should have known," Vanessa said. "I know what Dorian Ashby is. I told myself I was using him as a contingency and not a weapon. That's the same lie I've been telling myself for 8 months." She paused. "I'm tired of the lie." Emily said nothing. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Vanessa said. "I know what I did." "Good," Emily said. "Because I'm not there yet." Vanessa nodded. "Once." "Okay," she said. "Okay," Emily said. She turned to go. "Emily," Vanessa said. She stopped. "He was always going to choose you," Vanessa said. "I knew it when I made my move. I just thought I could make it not matter." Emily stood in the hallway for a moment. "You almost did," she said. She walked back to her children. In the council chamber, Silas Wren sat alone after everyone had gone. He looked at the Alpha's empty chair. He thought about 41 years of compact law. He thought about a woman who had walked out of a cathedral in the snow with 2 children on her hip and not one person at that altar moving to stop her. He thought about the word that Pack law had never managed to codify. Dignity. He picked up his pen, and he began writing the framework for the review. The Pack gave them 3 rooms. Emily and the children in one. Josh in another. Vanessa in a third at the far end of the corridor, behind a door that stayed closed. It was the most proximity Emily and Josh had shared in 3 weeks. It was the most honesty they'd shared in 3 years. The first morning was logistics. Raymond Cole arrived at 8 a.m., drove up from Portland overnight, appeared at the council building in a gray suit with a battered briefcase, and the unhurried energy of a man who has slept in his car before and considers it a professional credential. He shook Emily's hand. He looked at Josh. "You're taller than I expected," he said. "You're earlier than I expected," Josh said. "I left at 3 a.m., Raymond said. "I assumed you'd need me before the building opened." "I did," Josh said. "Then we're both right," Raymond said, and walked past him into the conference room like he owned it. Emily watched this exchange. Something about Raymond Cole, his complete indifference to the Alpha's gravitational field, made her feel, for the first time in 3 weeks, like the ground was solid. The legal situation, as Raymond laid it out on the conference table, was this. The petition for review had been accepted. Vanessa's public confession of material breach had created automatic grounds. The review session in 72 hours would address 3 questions. 1. Was the succession arrangement entered into under conditions that compromised its integrity? 2. Did the registered heirs have legal standing to challenge the arrangement? 3. What remedy, if any, did the compact provide? What remedies are available? Emily asked. Raymond opened his briefcase. He produced a document 40 pages long. "There are 7, he said. But realistically, 3 are applicable to your situation." He laid them out. The first, annulment of the binding arrangement on grounds of breach, returning both parties to pre-binding legal status. The second, Modification of the arrangement, with renegotiated terms approved by the council. The third, and this was the one that made the room go quiet, formal recognition of a prior claim. Prior claim, Emily said. Under Article 11 of the Compact, Raymond said, a registered heir's primary guardian can be recognized as holding a prior relational claim to the alpha, if that claim predates the binding arrangement and can be demonstrated to have been materially ongoing at the time of the arrangement. He looked at Emily over his glasses. You have been in a materially ongoing relationship with the alpha for 3 years, he said. You have 2 registered heirs from that relationship. The relationship predates the binding by approximately 30 months. That's a prior claim, Emily said. A substantial one, Raymond said. Josh was very still. Article 11 has never been used, he said. It's been on the books for 41 years, Raymond said. Silas Wren wrote it. I called him this morning. You called Silas Wren at? Josh checked his watch. 7 a.m.? 6:30, Raymond said. He was already awake. He said, and I'm quoting, that he wrote Article 11 specifically for situations in which an alpha's political obligations created an injustice to a prior claim holder, and that he had wondered for the last 30 years when someone would finally have the sense to use it. Emily looked at the document. She thought about a clause sitting in a 41-year-old legal document like a door left unlocked by an old man who believed, quietly and persistently, that justice eventually finds its own way through. She thought about Josh filing birth certificates. She thought about Raymond Cole being expected. She thought about preparation versus planning. If the council votes to recognize the prior claim, she said carefully, what does that mean? Exactly. In practical terms. Raymond looked at her. It means, he said, that the binding arrangement with Vanessa Hartford is legally superseded. It means your relationship with the alpha is formally recognized by the council and the PAC. It means Clara and Liam are publicly acknowledged heirs with full standing. He paused. It means you stop being a secret. The word landed in the room and sat there. Secret. 3 years of being exactly that. 3 years of Marlowe Street and no overnight stays in official records, and being kept so carefully separate that she'd become invisible even to herself sometimes. She looked at Josh. He was looking at her. Emily, he started. Don't, she said. Not yet. He stopped. I need to think, she said. She took Clara to the council building's small courtyard. It was cold. The snow from the previous night had settled into a thin, hard crust that crunched under their boots. Clara immediately began testing its structural integrity with systematic heel stomps, reporting her findings to no one in particular. Emily sat on a stone bench and watched her daughter in thought. She thought about what it would mean to stay. To walk into that council chamber in 72 hours and claim the prior right, and let Raymond Cole and Silas Wren and 41 years of obscure compact law rewrite the last 3 years into something recognized and formal and real. To stop being a secret. To let Josh Smith, the man who had watched her walk out of a cathedral and said nothing, the man who had also filed birth certificates and called lawyers and driven north alone in the dark to stand on her porch and say, I always knew I'd come back. To let him be the man she chose. Consciously. This time with open eyes and full information and no illusions. And she thought about what it would mean to leave. She had the car. She had the money. Raymond could continue the legal proceedings from Portland. She could take the prior claim recognition and the compact protections, and she could go somewhere that was not Ashford and build the life she'd been designing for 8 months. Without Josh. With the full legal standing of her children, but without the man. Both options were available to her. That was new. That was, she realized, sitting on a cold stone bench while her daughter stomped patterns into frozen snow, the thing that had changed. She was not choosing between staying and being abandoned again. She was choosing between 2 real paths. Both survivable. Both hers. Clara came and stood in front of her. Snow on her boots. Cheeks pink. That particular expression of a child who is about to say something that adults are not ready for. Mama, she said. Yes. Is Papa going to live with us now? Emily looked at her daughter. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Clara considered this. I think he should, Clara said. He's bad at being away. He looks wrong when he's not near you. He looks wrong, Emily repeated. Like a coat on the wrong hook, Clara said. Technically fine, but not right. Emily stared at her 4-year-old. Where did you get that? She said. Clara shrugged. I made it up. She turned and went back to stomping snow. Emily sat on the bench for another minute. Then she went inside to find Josh. She found him in the small room they'd given him. He was standing at the window. Again, he was always at windows. She'd noticed this about him early, in year one, the way he defaulted to glass when he was thinking. Like he needed to see the full distance to think clearly. She knocked on the open door. He turned. Can I come in? She said. Yes, he said. Like the word had been waiting. She sat in the chair by the window. He stayed standing, not dominant, not deliberate. Just unable, she understood, to sit still right now. I want to ask you something, she said. And I need you to answer it without the legal framing. Without the compact and Article 11 and prior claims and all of it. Just the actual answer. Okay, he said. If none of this had happened, Emily said. No petition. No Dorian. No council emergency session. If you had simply come to that cabin and knocked on my door and I had opened it, what were you going to say? He was quiet. Josh, she said. What were you going to say? He turned from the window. He looked at her with an expression she had not seen on his face in 3 years. Not the alpha expression, not the controlled neutral strategic expression, not even the expression from the hospital room when he held Liam for the first time. Something older than all of those. Something that looked like the actual face of the man underneath the king. I was going to say that I made a choice in April that I cannot undo cleanly, he said. And that I knew when I made it that it was wrong. Not politically wrong. Not strategically wrong. Wrong. The kind of wrong that you know in your chest before your head catches up. He paused. I was going to say that I kept you separate because I was afraid of what the council would do to you if you were public. And that the fear was real, but it was also convenient. And that I used a real fear as cover for a cowardice I didn't want to name. Emily said nothing. I was going to say that I have watched you build a life from scratch in 3 weeks. New name, new car, a cabin, legal counsel, contingency plans, all of it. And that I have never in my life been more sure that you are the strongest person I know. And the most wasted. By me. In keeping you separate, I took someone extraordinary and made her invisible. He stopped. And then, he said, I was going to ask if there was any version of what comes next in which you let me try to be worth it. The room was very quiet. Emily looked at him for a long time. That's a good answer, she said. It's the true one, he said. I know, she said. That's why it's good. She stood up. I'm going to walk into that council chamber in 72 hours, she said. And I'm going to let Raymond use Article 11. And I'm going to do that for me and for Clara and for Liam. Not for you. He nodded. I know. And then, she said, after that is done and the legal situation is settled and I am no longer making decisions inside a crisis, then we talk. About what comes next. About what trying looks like. About whether I can get to a place where the trust is real again. However long that takes, he said. It could be a long time, she said. I know, he said. You filed those birth certificates, she said. You built a legal mechanism inside your own marriage. You drove north alone. Those are real things. She paused. But they don't erase the altar. No, he said. They don't. Don't expect them to. I don't, he said. She walked to the door. She stopped. Clara says you look like a code on the wrong hook when you're not near me, she said. He blinked. She said that. She invented the metaphor herself. She was very pleased about it. Something moved through his expression. Something that in another man would have cracked into a full smile, but in Josh Smith manifested as a slight softening around the eyes that was somehow more affecting. She's terrifying, he said. She gets it from you, Emily said. She left. The second night, Vanessa knocked on Emily's door. It was late. The children were asleep. Emily was reviewing Raymond's brief for the 4th time, because reading it 4 times was not excessive when the entire legal architecture of your future was balanced on 41-year-old Pack law. She opened the door. Vanessa was in a robe. No armor. No performance. Just her sister. I can't sleep, Vanessa said. Neither can I, Emily said. A pause. Can I? Vanessa started. Emily stepped aside. Vanessa came in. She sat on the end of the bed. Emily sat on the chair. The same posture they'd used as teenagers when one of them had a nightmare and the other had opened her door without being asked. They sat in silence for a while. I'm going to leave Ashford, Vanessa said. After the review. Whatever the outcome. Where? Emily said. I don't know yet, Vanessa said. Somewhere that isn't here. Somewhere I can figure out what I actually want rather than what I thought wanting power felt like. Emily looked at her. Do you know what it actually feels like? She said. Wanting power? Empty, Vanessa said. It feels empty. The council seat and the crown and the residence. It felt like filling a hole with something that evaporated as soon as it touched the edges. She looked at her hands. You know what didn't feel empty? She said. Emily waited. The look on Clara's face when she saw Josh on your porch, Vanessa said. That child looked at her father and said you took a long time, like she'd been keeping a tab open. Like she'd always known he'd show up. She paused. I have never been that sure of anything. Emily thought about Clara. About the absolute certainty in her small voice. About a code on the wrong hook. She's remarkable, Emily said. She's yours, Vanessa said. That's why. They sat in silence again. Different from the earlier silences. Softer. I'm not forgiving you tonight, Emily said. I know, Vanessa said. But I don't want to lose you permanently, Emily said. I want to be angry for a while. Properly angry. And then I want to see what's on the other side of it. Vanessa nodded. Something in her shoulders released. Okay, she said. Okay, Emily said. Vanessa stood. Moved toward the door. She said. Yeah, you were always the right choice, Vanessa said. I just needed to be wrong about it first. She left. Emily sat in the dark room with her sleeping children and her legal brief and thought about sisters and crowns and the specific cost of learning things the hard way. The review convened at noon on the third day. The chamber was full. All 9 elder seats occupied. Raymond Cole at the petitioner's table with his battered briefcase and his gray suit. Josh at the alpha's seat, this time occupying it with a quality Emily hadn't seen before. Not performing authority, actually using it. Vanessa beside him, formally present because the compact required the consort's attendance at a succession review. Emily sat at the protected party table. Beside Raymond, she had dressed carefully. Not armor, she didn't want armor. She wanted to look like what she was. A woman who had been precise in her grief, meticulous in her preparation, and was now sitting in this room by choice. Dark green coat. Clara's brass buttons had inspired her. She looked at no one when she sat down. Then she looked at Silas Wren. He was looking at her already. He gave a very small nod. She gave one back. The session opened. Silas Wren spoke for 11 minutes, laying out the procedural framework with the unhurried authority of a man who has been in rooms like this for 50 years and has outlasted every crisis brought into them. Raymond presented the petition. He was clear, efficient. He laid the 3 years of documented relationship, the apartment, the children, the birth records, before the council with the methodical care of a man building a structure that will not fall. Dorian Ashby sat in an observer chair, stripped of his voting rights pending the Article 4 violation investigation, and said nothing. He had the expression of a man watching a game he thought he was winning. Discover it had changed its rules. The council asked questions. Emily answered them. Her voice was steady throughout. When Elder Whitmore, who had pivoted so completely from Dorian's corner that it would have been impressive if it weren't so transparent, asked her why she had not come forward sooner, she said. Because I was kept separate. That was a choice made by the Alpha, and it was wrong, and he knows it was wrong. But I want to be precise about something. She looked at the table. I was not passive in being kept separate. I accepted the arrangement because I was afraid that full visibility would mean full vulnerability. I was protecting myself as much as I was accepting his protection. She looked up. I'm not a victim of his choices. I'm a party to them. I'm here today because I'm done being a party to the kind of choices that make me invisible. The chamber was quiet. Silas Wren wrote something down. Then Vanessa spoke. She had not been asked to speak. She requested the floor. Silas granted it. She stood. She did not look at her prepared notes. I entered the binding arrangement knowing that a prior claim existed, she said. I did not disclose this knowledge to the council. That is a second material breach, separate from the Dorian Ashby matter, that I am disclosing now voluntarily. She sat down. Whitmore stared at her. He started. I'm being honest, Vanessa said. In a room where decisions are made, which is apparently something I should have been from the beginning. Raymond Cole, beside Emily, wrote one word on his notepad and turned it so she could see. Checkmate. The council deliberated for 40 minutes. Emily sat in the protected party room with Clara and Liam and Garrett, who produced, again, hot chocolate, and who Emily was beginning to think had anticipated this entire situation with a level of preparation that rivaled her own. "Garrett," she said. "Ma'am, when Josh came to you, when he first told you about the plan, what did you think?" Garrett considered this. "I thought," he said carefully, "that it was the most complicated way I'd ever seen a man try to fix a mistake." "Did you think it would work?" A pause. "I thought," Garrett said, "that it had a better chance of working than him standing at the altar and saying nothing." Emily looked at him. "That's not a yes," she said. "No, ma'am," Garrett said. "But it's not a no either." Clara looked up from her hot chocolate. "Garrett," she said. "Yes, Miss Clara. Are you always this careful with words?" Garrett blinked. "I try to be," he said. "Good," Clara said, with the tone of someone issuing a performance review. "Most people aren't careful enough." She went back to her hot chocolate. Garrett looked at Emily. Emily looked at Garrett. Neither of them said anything. Some things don't need words. At 2:47 p.m., Silas Wren sent for them. Emily walked back into the chamber. She sat at the petitioner's table. She looked at the 9 elders. She looked at Josh. She looked at Vanessa. She looked at Raymond, who was completely still in the way that lawyers go still when they are either very confident or very worried. And she had spent enough time with Raymond Cole to know which one this was. Silas Wren picked up a document. "The council has reviewed the petition filed on behalf of Clara Smith and Liam Smith," he said. "We have reviewed the binding arrangement between Alpha Josh Smith and Vanessa Hartford. We have reviewed the disclosures made voluntarily by Vanessa Hartford during these proceedings. And we have reviewed the provisions of Article 11 of the Northeastern Pact Compact." He looked over his glasses at the room. "Article 11, he said, has sat in this compact for 41 years. I wrote it in 1985 after witnessing a situation not unlike this one, in which an alpha's political obligations created an injustice to someone who had no standing to challenge it. I wrote it because I believed then, and believe now, that PAC law should not be a mechanism by which the powerful protect their errors at the expense of those without a crown." The room was very quiet. "We are voting on 3 measures," Silas said. "The first, dissolution of the binding arrangement between Josh Smith and Vanessa Hartford on grounds of mutual material breach and prior claim. The second, formal recognition of Emily Hartford as prior claim holder under Article 11, with full protected standing and council acknowledgement. The third," he paused. He looked at Emily directly. "The third measure," he said, "is one I added this morning. It was not part of the original petition. It requires the petitioner's consent to be activated." Emily went very still. "What is it?" Raymond said. Silas looked at his document. "Article 11, Section 3, he said, "which I will confess I have never read aloud in this chamber, because it has never been relevant until today." He read, "In cases where prior claim recognition is granted, the council may, with the petitioner's explicit consent, formally recommend that the Alpha pursue a binding arrangement with the prior claim holder, to be undertaken not as a political obligation, but as a voluntary act of formal acknowledgement, at a time and in a manner of the petitioner's choosing, subject to no timeline and no council pressure." He set the document down. "In plain language," he said, "this means the council can formally recommend, not require, not pressure, not politically mandate, that Josh Smith ask Emily Hartford to be his queen. On her terms. In her time. With no political machinery attached." He looked at Emily. "A recommendation, Miss Hartford," he said. "Not a command. Not a transaction. Not a succession arrangement. A recommendation, subject entirely to your consent to receive it." The chamber was absolutely silent. Emily heard Clara's voice in her head. "You took a long time, Papa." She heard Vanessa. "You were always the right choice." She heard Josh. "I was going to ask if there was any version of what comes next in which you let me try to be worth it." She heard Raymond's pen on paper. She heard the Atlantic, somehow, even this far from the coast. She heard 11 minutes of crying in a parking lot. She heard herself on a back porch in the dark, screaming at the ocean until she had nothing left. She heard the silence after. The good silence. The one that comes after you've said everything and discovered you're still standing. She looked at Josh. He was looking at her. Not with hope. He was too careful for naked hope. Not with need. Not with the alpha neutrality. He was looking at her the way someone looks when they have put everything they have on the table and are waiting, without expectation, for the other person to decide what it's worth. Emily Hartford took one breath. I consent to receive the recommendation, she said. The vote was 8-1. The one was Dorian Ashby, whose voting rights had been suspended but who, in a parliamentary technicality that even Silas Wren acknowledged with a thin smile, still held a fractional observer vote on non-punitive measures. It didn't matter. 8-1 was a supermajority by any measure. Vanessa voted yes. Everyone saw it. No one said anything about it in the chamber. After, in the corridor, Emily touched her sister's arm. Vanessa stopped. They looked at each other. You voted yes, Emily said. I did, Vanessa said. Why? Vanessa thought about it. Because it was right, she said simply. Emily looked at her sister. At the woman who had wanted the crown badly enough to take it. At the woman who had called Dorian Ashby. At the woman who had then walked into a council chamber and dismantled her own position piece by piece with the same precision she'd used to build it. I'm going to be angry at you for a while, Emily said. I know, Vanessa said. And then I'm going to call you, Emily said. Something moved through Vanessa's face. Okay, she said. Okay, Emily said. They gave her the courtyard. She didn't ask for it. Garrett simply appeared, opened the door to the outside, and gestured in a way that said this is yours for as long as you need it. The snow from 3 days ago had half melted in the pale winter sun. The stone bench was cold. She sat on it anyway. She heard the door open behind her. She didn't turn. Josh sat beside her. Not close enough to touch. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. That particular warmth that she had slept against for 3 years and spent 3 weeks trying to forget and had not completely, not in the way she'd intended. They sat for a while. The kind of silence that is not empty. The recommendation, Josh said finally. Yes, Emily said. I want to honor it, he said. I want to ask you. But I meant what I said, your timeline. Your terms. I know, she said. It could be a year, he said. It could be longer. It could be, she said. I'll wait, he said. I know, she said again. She looked at the courtyard, the half-melted snow, the stone walls, the pale January sky above Ashford that was the same sky she'd driven under on Route 93 3 weeks ago. I want 3 things, she said. Tell me, he said. I want a real home, she said. Not a Marlowe Street arrangement. Not a separate life. A real home. With a front door that both our names are on and a bedroom that doesn't feel like a secret. Done, he said. I want Vanessa to be able to come back, she said. When she's ready. When I'm ready. She's still my sister. He nodded. Agreed. And I want, she stopped. He waited. I want you to tell me the next time you're afraid of something, she said. Not the legal solution. Not the prepared exit. The actual fear. I want you to say it out loud to me before you build an architecture around it. He was quiet for a moment. That's the hardest one, he said. I know, she said. I'll try, he said. Trying isn't enough, she said. I need you to actually do it. Then I'll actually do it, he said. She looked at him. At the man who had been too careful and too late and too strategic, and who had also, underneath all of it, never stopped. I'm not saying yes to the question yet, she said. I know, he said. But I'm not saying no, she said. He exhaled. One breath. Controlled. But she heard everything in it. The door to the courtyard opened. Clara appeared. She was wearing her green coat with the brass buttons, and she had Liam by the hand, half leading, half dragging him in the way of older siblings who have decided that movement is the objective and speed is non-negotiable. She stopped when she saw them on the bench. She looked at her mother. She looked at her father. She looked at the space between them. The 6 inches of cold stone bench that was neither closed nor insurmountable. She walked over. She climbed up between them. She settled herself with the authority of a child who has decided where she belongs and does not require permission to belong there. She looked forward at the courtyard. It's cold, she announced. Yes, Emily said. We should go inside soon, Clara said. In a minute, Josh said. Okay, Clara said. 1 minute. She leaned, slightly, just slightly, with the careful architecture of a child who is testing weight distribution, against her mother's arm. And she reached out her hand. And Josh took it. And on the other side, without being asked, Emily took her other hand. And the 3 of them sat on the cold stone bench in the Ashford winter sun. 1 minute. That stretched into several. Liam, abandoned at the courtyard door, looked at this arrangement. He considered it. He walked over. He stood in front of Josh and raised both arms. The universal toddler language. Up. Josh lifted him. And Liam settled against his father's chest with the complete, immediate trust of a very small person who has decided that this is where the warmth is and does not require further information. Emily looked at all of it. Her son asleep against a king's chest. Her daughter holding both their hands with the grip of someone who has decided this knot will not be untied. The pale Massachusetts sky. The half-melted snow. The stone walls of the city she had walked out of 3 weeks ago and returned to not as a secret, not as a ghost, but as a woman with legal standing and a prior claim and 3 things she had asked for out loud and received. She thought about the letter. He wants you to see. She had gone to that cathedral to see it end. She was sitting in this courtyard watching something begin. Not the same thing. Something harder and more honest and built on the wreckage of what came before in the way that real things are built. Not despite the damage, but with full knowledge of it. She thought about 11 minutes. About counting them. About the precision of her own grief and how it had kept her intact when everything else was falling. She thought about Petra in Rockport, who still didn't know the full story and would require a very long phone call and probably a bottle of wine. She thought about Raymond Cole, who had been expecting her call. She thought about Silas Wren, who had written a door into Pack Law 41 years ago and waited for someone to walk through it. She thought about Clara, who had made up a metaphor about coat hooks and been entirely right. She looked at Josh. He was already looking at her. "One thing at a time," she said. "One thing at a time," he agreed. She looked forward. The sun was moving. The snow was melting. Ashford was cold and complicated and full of stone buildings and old laws and people who had made wrong choices and were now, slowly, making different ones. It was not a happy ending. It was better than that. It was a real beginning. In a gray sedan outside the council building, Dorian Ashby sat for a long moment. He thought about 6 years of patience. He thought about a recording that Garrett Voss had been keeping for exactly the right moment. He thought about Vanessa Hartford, who he had assumed was a tool, and who had turned out to be something he had no category for. He started the engine. He drove away from Ashford. He did not look back. Some games you lose. The ones who survive know when to leave the board. And in a bookshop in Rockport, Petra answered her phone on the second ring. "Emily," she said. "I've been waiting." "I know," Emily said. "I have a lot to tell you." "I have wine," Petra said. "You're going to need more," Emily said. And for the first time in 3 weeks. Really, truly, from somewhere real. She laughed. The phone call lasted 3 hours. Emily sat on the floor of the protected party suite with her back against the bed, and her knees pulled up, and the burner phone wedged between her shoulder and her ear. And she told Petra everything. Not the edited version. Not the version she'd been telling herself. The clean, precise version where every decision was strategic and every emotion was managed and every tear was counted. The real version. The one where she had stood at the back of that cathedral and hoped, until the very last second, that Josh would stop the ceremony. The one where she had cried for 11 minutes and counted them because counting them was the only way to make herself stop. The one where she had driven north on Route 93 with 2 sleeping children and $14,000 in cash and a fake name on a car registration, and she had been, underneath all the preparation, completely terrified. The one where Clara had asked if careful was the same as hiding. The one where Liam had reached his hand toward his father in the dark. The one where Josh had said, "I always knew I'd come back," and she had wanted, with a ferocity that frightened her, to believe it. Petra listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. She did not offer opinions where none were asked for. She was, Emily thought, the best person she knew at the specific art of listening. Not the performative kind, not the kind that is really just waiting for your turn to speak, but the real kind. The kind that makes the person talking feel heard all the way down. When Emily finished, there was a short silence. Then Petra said, "How are the children? Not what are you going to do, or I told you so, or he doesn't deserve you. Just, how are the children?" Emily felt something loosen in her chest. "Clara is conducting performance reviews of everyone in the building," Emily said. "Liam fell asleep on Josh's chest and has shown no interest in moving." "Good," Petra said. "Good. Children know," Petra said. "They don't have the vocabulary yet, but they know. If Liam is sleeping on his chest and Clara is watching him like a hawk and deciding he's acceptable, then whatever Josh Smith is, he's not dangerous to them." Emily thought about this. "He's not dangerous to them," she agreed. He's dangerous to me. Different kind of dangerous, Petra said. Is it? The kind that hurts you is the kind you let in, Petra said. That means it matters. That means it's real. A pause. The question isn't whether he can hurt you. The question is whether he's worth the risk. I don't know yet, Emily said. That's an honest answer, Petra said. You're not going to tell me what to do? Emily said. Emily, Petra said, in the tone of someone who has known you since the 7th grade and therefore has earned the right to be direct. You planned an exit strategy for 8 months. You built a fake identity. You packed go bags for your children. You hired a PAC law specialist and researched the 1987 compact and somehow, ended up in the council chamber anyway, on your own terms, with legal standing and a prior claim and an old man named Silas Wren on your side. A pause. You don't need me to tell you what to do, Petra said. You've been knowing what to do this whole time. You just needed someone to sit with while you figured out you already knew. Emily leaned her head back against the bed. She looked at the ceiling. I miss you, she said. Come to Rockport when this settles, Petra said. Bring the children. Leave Josh at home for that one. Agreed, Emily said. And Emily? Yeah. The 11 minutes, Petra said. You can stop counting now. Emily sat on the floor after the call ended. The suite was quiet. Clara and Liam were asleep in the next room. Through the wall, she could hear the low, steady sound of the building settling in the winter cold. She sat there for a long time. Then she got up. She went to the window. She looked out at Ashford, the city she had lived beside for 3 years without ever fully living in. The stone buildings. The cathedral towers visible in the distance, gray against the night sky. The streets she had driven through 100 times as someone else's secret. She put her hand on the cold glass. She thought, I'm done being invisible here. Not a declaration. Not a performance. Just a fact. Quiet and certain and entirely her own. Vanessa Hartford left Ashford on a Tuesday morning in January. She packed 2 bags. Not the bags she'd arrived with. Those had been packed with the careful curation of a woman assembling a queen's wardrobe. The right gowns. The right accessories. The right presentation for every political occasion. These bags were different. Practical clothes. Books. The small oil painting of the Massachusetts coastline that had hung in her childhood bedroom and that she had taken from their parents' house after the funeral. The one thing she'd claimed that had nothing to do with status or presentation. She stood in the doorway of the Alpha's residence, her residence, technically, for approximately 3 weeks, and looked at the room she was leaving. It was a beautiful room. High ceilings. Tall windows. Furniture that had been chosen by people who understood the language of authority so fluently they spoke it in their sleep. It had never felt like hers. She understood, standing in the doorway with 2 bags and a painting, that this was not a tragedy. Some rooms are not meant for you. The wisdom is in knowing before you've redecorated. Garrett appeared in the corridor. He was holding an envelope. From the Alpha, he said. Vanessa took it. She looked at it for a moment. What is it? She said. I don't know, Garrett said. She opened it. Inside was a single card. Josh's handwriting, angular, economical. The handwriting of someone who was precise even in personal correspondence. It said, the council seat in the Western Territory is vacant. Silas will be recommending a replacement in March. Your name is on my list if you want it. Not as a consolation. As a recognition. You know PAC law better than anyone in this building except Silas. J. Vanessa read it twice. She thought about 8 months of council dinners and elder relationships and making herself fluent in the language of PAC governance. She thought about wanting the crown. She thought about what she actually wanted underneath the crown. She thought about the fact that this card was, in its own way, a more honest acknowledgement of her capabilities than anything the binding arrangement had offered. She put the card in her coat pocket. Tell him thank you, she said to Garrett. You could tell him yourself, Garrett said. He's in his study. Vanessa considered this. She picked up her bags. Tell him, she said, that I'll think about the council seat. And tell him, she paused. Tell him to be worth it. Not just in the legal sense. Garrett nodded. Ma'am. She walked down the corridor. She walked out of the residence. She put her bags in her car. She drove west. She didn't know exactly where she was going. That was, she discovered, not as frightening as she'd expected. It felt, actually, like the first decision she'd made in 8 months that was entirely and only hers. She stopped in Northampton. She got coffee. She sat in a small cafe and looked out the window at the street and breathed. A woman at the next table had a toddler who was systematically destroying a muffin with the focused intensity of a very small demolition expert. Vanessa watched this for a while. She thought about Clara's green coat and brass buttons. She thought about Clara looking at Josh and saying, "You took a long time," Papa with the tone of someone issuing an invoice. She took out her phone. She almost called Emily. Then she put the phone back. Not yet. Emily had said she would call when she was ready. Vanessa would wait. She was getting better at waiting. She ordered another coffee. She looked out the window. She thought about what she actually wanted. And for the first time in a long time, the answer that came back was not a crown or a council seat or a position or a strategy. It was quieter than all of those things. It was smaller. It was hers. The Article 4 violation hearing convened 6 weeks after the review session. Dorian Ashby attended. He sat in the same chair he always sat in. Same reading glasses. Same pleasant professorial expression. He had spent 6 weeks preparing his defense. It took the council 45 minutes to dismantle it. Garrett's recording was, as Raymond Cole had observed the night of the emergency session, legally unambiguous. Dispatching a retrieval team to intercept registered PAC heirs on a public highway was a direct violation of Article 4 protections. Dorian's attempt to argue that he had not been acting in an official capacity, that the phone call was private, that Pell's people were not formally deployed as PAC agents, collapsed under the weight of 3 supporting pieces of evidence that Garrett produced with the calm efficiency of someone who had been building a case for considerably longer than 6 weeks. Garrett, Emily had come to understand, was excellent at long games. He had learned from the best. The council stripped Dorian of his observer voting rights. They imposed a formal censure, the first in 30 years. They referred the matter of Pell's retrieval operation to a civil review board. And Silas Wren, in the dry, measured tone of a man who has waited a long time to say something and has chosen his moment carefully, noted for the record that Dorian Ashby's original removal from the Elders' Council 6 years ago had been entirely procedurally correct, and that the subsequent 6 years of Dorian's efforts to reverse that decision had demonstrated, conclusively, that the original decision was correct. Dorian sat through all of it with his reading glasses on his nose. When it was over, he picked up his papers. He stood. He looked at Josh. "This isn't finished," he said. Josh looked at him. "Yes," Josh said. "It is. Not a threat. Not a warning. Just a statement of fact from a man who had stopped being afraid of Dorian Ashby. Somewhere around the night, he drove north alone on a coastal highway." Dorian left. The door closed behind him. Silas Wren looked at the closed door. "He'll go south," Silas said. "The southern PACs have been restless. He'll find buyers there for whatever he's selling." "Should we?" Whitmore started. "Let him go," Silas said. "Some problems solve themselves when you remove their fuel." He looked at Josh. "Stop giving him something to push against, and he'll find there's nothing left to push." Josh nodded. "And the southern PACs," he said. "That," Silas said, "is a problem for next quarter." He closed his folder. "One thing at a time." He said it without knowing that it was the same phrase Emily had said in the courtyard. Josh heard it anyway. He almost smiled. February. The house was on the eastern edge of Ashford, where the city thinned out toward the coast, and the streets got quieter, and the buildings got lower, and you could, on a clear day, smell the ocean from the front porch. It was not the Alpha's residence. That had been the first conversation. The one where Emily had sat across from Josh at the council building's conference table with Raymond Cole present. Not because she needed legal counsel, but because she wanted a witness, and said, "I'm not moving into the residence." Josh had not argued. "The residence is a political building," he said. "It's where the PAC conducts business. It's not a home." "I want a home," Emily said. "I know," he said. "I've been looking." She'd blinked. "You've been looking at houses," she said. "Since November," he said. "You were looking at houses in November," she said slowly. "I told you," he said. "I was preparing." Raymond Cole had written something on his notepad and turned it away so Emily couldn't see it. She suspected it said the same thing as last time. The house had 4 bedrooms. A front porch that faced east. A kitchen large enough for the specific chaos of 2 small children. A back garden that was currently buried under February snow, but that the listing described as substantial, which Clara had interpreted as meaning she could have a section for scientific experiments. a proposal she had put to Josh with a formal presentation that included a hand-drawn diagram. Josh had approved the scientific experiment section without hesitation. Emily had watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway and felt something happen in her chest that she was not yet ready to name. The day they moved in was a Saturday. Garrett organized the logistics, because Garrett organized everything and had apparently decided that this was within his professional remit, whether or not anyone had asked. Petra drove down from Rockport. She arrived with 2 bottles of wine and the oil painting of the Massachusetts coastline that Vanessa had left behind in the residence, forwarded via Garrett with a note that said simply, "For the new house. It belongs near water anyway." Emily held the painting for a long time. She hung it in the hallway, where both names were on the front door. That night, after the children were asleep and Petra had driven back to Rockport, and the boxes were half unpacked in the way of first nights in new houses everywhere, Emily sat on the front porch. Josh came out with 2 cups of tea. He sat beside her. They looked at the dark street. The snow had stopped. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. The specific sharp clarity of a February night in Massachusetts, where the cold takes the haze out of everything and the stars come in close. "It's a good house," Emily said. "It is," Josh said. "Clara has already named the garden section," Emily said. "I know," Josh said. She filed a formal request. "In writing. With a diagram." "She's 4, Emily said. "She's your 4-year-old, Josh said. Emily looked at the stars. "I called Vanessa yesterday," she said. Josh was still. "How was it?" he said. "Hard," Emily said. "And then easier than I expected. And then hard again." She paused. "We talked for 2 hours. She told me about Northampton. She told me about the council seat. She hasn't given me an answer yet," Josh said. "She will," Emily said. "She just needs it to be her decision." "I know," Josh said. "She's not a villain," Emily said. "I need you to know that I know that." Josh looked at her. "I know that too," he said. "She made a choice I wouldn't have made. But she made it with open eyes, and she unwound it with open eyes. He paused. "That's more honesty than most people manage." Emily thought about this. "She said something to me," Emily said. "When she voted yes." "What?" "She said it was right," Emily said. "Just that. Not I owed you, or I'm sorry, or any of the things you'd expect. Just, it was right." Josh was quiet. "She would have been a capable queen," he said. "That's the truth. She would have been politically effective and strategically intelligent, and the council would have." "Josh," Emily said. He stopped. "I know," he said. "I know." She looked at him. "Say it," she said. "Out loud. You said you would." He looked at the street. "I was afraid," he said. "Of what?" "That if I chose you publicly, if I brought you into the political space, the council would use you." He paused. "The way councils use people. Finding the pressure points. Finding what you love most and making it a liability." His jaw tightened. "You and the children. I kept you separate because I was afraid of what they'd do if they knew how much you mattered. And instead," Emily said, "you made me matter in private and perform invisibility in public. Which meant that when the pressure came anyway, I had no standing to push back." "Yes," he said. "Your fear created the exact vulnerability you were trying to prevent," she said. "Yes," he said again. "That's the thing about fear," Emily said. "It's very bad at predicting which specific disaster it's preventing you from." Josh looked at her. "I'm writing that down," he said. "Clara said something better," Emily said. "Something about coat hooks." "She did," he said. "We're going to be quoting her for years," Emily said. "We are," he said. They sat in the cold and drank their tea and looked at the stars over Ashford. Not touching. Not yet. But close enough. Spring came to Massachusetts the way it always does, grudgingly, incrementally, one warm day followed by 2 cold ones, as though the season needs to be convinced of itself before it commits. Clara turned 5 in May. Emily made the cake herself. Chocolate, 3 layers, with buttercream frosting that Clara had supervised with an intensity that suggested she considered baking a technical discipline requiring oversight. Josh arrived with a present. A wooden box with brass latches that opened to reveal a complete starter kit for botanical observation, including a magnifying glass and a field notebook and small labeled jars for specimen collection. Clara opened it. She looked at it. She looked at Josh. "Did you ask Garrett what to get?" she said. Josh blinked. "What?" "Garrett knows what I like," Clara said. "He's been paying attention." Did he tell you to get this? A pause. We discussed options, Josh said carefully. So Garrett picked it, Clara said. I approved the selection, Josh said. Clara considered this framework. Okay, she said. Tell Garrett thank you. I will, Josh said. And also thank you, Clara added as an afterthought, with the air of someone who is being generous. She took the box to the garden. Josh watched her go. He looked at Emily. She's going to run something someday, he said. I don't know what. But something. The world probably, Emily said. Probably, he agreed. Liam at 2 years old was everything Clara was not. And everything Clara was, just expressed differently. Where Clara was precise, Liam was exuberant. Where Clara observed, Liam participated. Where Clara filed formal requests with diagrams, Liam simply climbed whatever needed climbing and looked at you afterward with Josh's exact expression. That calm, slightly unapologetic assurance of someone who has assessed the situation and made an executive decision. He called Josh Papa from the first week. He called Emily Mama in a voice that managed to contain multiple syllables despite technically only having two, the way toddlers do, stretching words like taffy until they carry more weight than any adult version. He called Garrett Ga, which Garrett accepted with the same professional equanimity with which he accepted everything, though Emily had caught him, once, repeating it quietly to himself with an expression she had no framework for interpreting except that it seemed to be positive. The botanical experiment section of the garden produced, over the spring and summer, the following. 3 identified species of native Massachusetts wildflowers. 1 failed attempt to cultivate mint that Clara documented as a scientific negative result rather than a failure, which Emily thought was exactly the right way to look at it. A comprehensive field notebook with 37 entries that Clara had illustrated herself with drawings of varying accuracy but consistent commitment. And one afternoon in June when Josh sat in the garden with Clara while she explained the difference between a primary root and a lateral root, using a dandelion she had excavated with surgical precision, and Emily watched from the kitchen window and thought, this is what I came back for. Not the council vote. Not Article 11. This. Raymond Cole sent his final invoice in August. Emily opened it at the kitchen table with her morning coffee. It was significantly lower than she'd expected. She called him. Raymond, she said. Your invoice is wrong. It's correct, he said. I've been tracking the hours, she said. This doesn't account for the preparation work before I called you. The research into the compact. Ms. Hartford, Raymond said, in the tone of a man who has made a decision and is not interested in arguing it. The work I did prior to your first call was done because I found the situation legally interesting. I don't charge for personal interest. That's not. Also, Raymond said, Silas Wren called me in November. Before any of this began. He told me to be ready. He told me there was a woman who might call, who had 2 registered PAC heirs and a prior claim, and who would need someone who knew Article 11. Emily set down her coffee. Silas Wren called you in November, she said. Yes. Silas Wren knew in November, she said. Silas Wren, Raymond said, with what sounded like professional admiration, has been watching Josh Smith make this particular mistake for 3 years. He wrote the remedy 41 years ago. He was not going to let it go unused. Emily stared at the wall. He prepared the exit before Josh even built the door into the marriage, she said. The Elders' Council exists, Raymond said, to protect the PAC. Not the Alpha. The PAC, which includes its registered heirs and their mother. A pause. Silas Wren has been doing this job for 50 years. He is very good at it. Emily thought about a white-bearded man at a stone table who had nodded at her across a chamber. She thought about 41 years. She thought about doors left unlocked by people who believed in justice finding its way through. Pay the invoices written, Raymond said. And tell those children of yours hello. He hung up. Emily sat at the kitchen table. She thought about all the people who had been paying quiet, careful attention in the background of the story she thought was only happening to her. Petra with her open door and her wine. Garrett with his professional equanimity and his recorded phone calls and his inexhaustible supply of hot chocolate. Raymond Cole, who had been expecting her call. Silas Wren, who had written a clause in 1985 and held it ready like a key. She thought about what it meant to have people like that. To have been seen, even when you thought you were invisible. She paid the invoice. She sent Raymond a bottle of good wine and a card that said, "Thank you for being expected." He called to tell her it was the best thank you note he'd received in 30 years of PAC law. Vanessa accepted the Western Territory Council seat in September. She called Emily the night before the confirmation vote. "I'm going to say yes tomorrow," she said. "I know," Emily said. "You knew before I did," Vanessa said. "I know you," Emily said. A pause. "How's the house?" Vanessa said. "Good," Emily said. "Clara's garden is remarkable. She has documented 37 species." "Of course she has," Vanessa said. "Liam climbed onto the roof of the garden shed last week," Emily said. "Via the compost bin." "That's Josh's fault," Vanessa said immediately. "That's exactly what I said," Emily said. A pause. "Warmer now." Vanessa said. "Yeah." "Are you?" She stopped. Started again. "Are you happy?" Emily thought about it. Not the performed version. The real answer. "I'm getting there," she said. "Some days more than others. But she paused. "I'm in the right place. For the first time in a long time, I'm in the right place." "Okay," Vanessa said. "Okay," Emily said. "I'll call after the vote tomorrow," Vanessa said. "I'll pick up," Emily said. She would. Vanessa Hartford took her council seat in October. She wore navy, not black. She knew PAC law better than anyone in the room except Silas Wren, who sat across the table from her and looked at her with the expression Emily had once described as something adjacent to respect. She did not want the crown anymore. She wanted this. The room. The law. The work. The thing she had been good at all along, underneath the ambition that had pointed her in the wrong direction. After the first session, Silas Wren stayed behind as the room cleared. "You'll do well here," he said. "You don't know that yet," Vanessa said. "No," he said. "But I've been doing this 50 years. I know which ones pay attention." He looked at her. "You pay attention." He gathered his papers and left. Vanessa sat at the council table alone for a moment. She thought about a crown she'd wanted. She thought about a stone table she'd earned. She thought the second one felt better. Clara's botanical notebook had 53 entries by November. Liam had successfully negotiated a second helping of dessert 4 nights running using a charm offensive that Emily suspected he had studied and was deploying consciously. The house on the eastern edge of Ashford had accumulated the specific archaeology of a lived-in home. Wellington boots by the back door, Clara's diagrams on the refrigerator, a collection of smooth stones on the kitchen windowsill that Liam had been assembling since August for reasons he had not yet explained. Josh was there most nights. Not all. The PAC still ran on his time in ways that the House had had to accommodate council sessions and territory meetings and the endless, grinding machinery of being the alpha of the largest northeastern PAC in the United States. But most nights, he learned that Clara needed 15 minutes of quiet after school before she was ready to talk. He learned that Liam's pre-sleep routine required a specific song that Emily had been singing since the hospital, and that learning it, badly at first and then less badly, was one of the more important things he had done. He learned that Emily's version of relaxing was sitting on the front porch with tea and the specific silence of someone who has been managing other people's emotions all day and now needs her own. He learned to sit beside her in that silence. Not filling it, just being present in it. She was learning things too. She learned that Josh's version of afraid was very quiet and very still. Not avoidant, not aggressive, but a specific quality of stillness that she now recognized as the thing she had once mistaken for coldness. When she saw it, she had started doing something she had not planned and had not decided on, but that had become, without announcement, a thing she did. She put her hand on the table, or on the counter, or on the arm of the chair beside his. Not on him, not demanding, just there, close enough. And every time, without fail, the stillness in him shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. One evening in November, she found him in the kitchen with Liam asleep on his shoulder and a cold cup of tea in his hand, and an expression on his face she had been seeing more frequently. The one underneath the king, the one that belonged to the actual man. "What are you thinking about?" she said. He looked at her. "I'm thinking," he said, "that I spent 3 years building walls around the thing I cared about most, and then was surprised when the walls made the thing feel trapped." Emily looked at him. "That's a good metaphor," she said. "I learned from Clara," he said. "You're getting better at it," she said. The saying it out loud part. "I'm trying," he said. "You're doing it," she said. "There's a difference." He looked at her. Something moved through his face. The good something. The real one. December. 1 year. The anniversary of the cathedral was a Tuesday. Emily woke early. She lay in bed and listened to the house, Liam's breathing through the baby monitor, the particular creak of the third stair that Clara always hit coming down in the morning, the wind off the coast that had been steady all week. She thought about December 14th of the previous year. The burgundy cloak. The stone cathedral. The 300 witnesses who hadn't known she existed. She thought about walking out. She thought about 11 minutes. She got up. She made tea. She stood at the kitchen window and watched the dark December morning begin its slow translation into gray light. Josh came down at 7. He saw her at the window. He said nothing immediately. He put the kettle on for a second cup. He stood beside her. They looked at the garden together. Bare now, winter stripped, the botanical experiment section documented and resting until spring, the shed with its compost bin ramp still visible under the frost. It's today, Emily said. I know, Josh said. I'm not, she stopped. Started again. I'm not broken by it anymore. I want you to know that. The cathedral. December 14th. I'm not. She turned the cup in her hands. It happened. It was what it was. And then other things happened. Yes, he said. I'm just telling you I know what day it is, she said. And I wanted to say it out loud. Because saying things out loud is what we do now. He looked at her. It's what we do now, he agreed. They stood at the window. The garden lightened as the morning came in. Clara came down at 7:30. She assessed the kitchen, identified the presence of both parents simultaneously, and made an executive decision about breakfast that involved the good plates without asking permission. Liam came down at 7:45, negotiated his way onto Josh's shoulders within approximately 90 seconds, and observed the kitchen from this elevated position with the satisfaction of a general surveying favorable terrain. They made breakfast together. All 4 of them in the kitchen, Clara directing operations with the authority of someone who has firm opinions about the correct ratio of butter to toast, Liam providing commentary from his perch on Josh's shoulders, Emily making eggs, Josh handling the toast under Clara's supervision. It was loud. It was slightly chaotic. Liam dropped his cup. Clara's toast ratio was disputed and then conceded. Josh burned the corner of 2 slices and received a formal notice about this from Clara that he accepted with complete seriousness. It was the most ordinary morning of the year. It was the best morning of the year. They put the children to bed that night together. Clara's process. Reading 15 minutes, the specific lamp left on to a specific brightness, the field notebook on the bedside table in case she thought of something that needed documenting, and a conversation that had become, over the months, the best part of the day. The one where she said whatever was in her head, and both parents listened without interrupting, and sometimes said things back that she then considered, and either accepted or filed for further review. Tonight she said, I think next year I want to study birds as well as plants. That's a good expansion, Josh said. The botanical notebook can have a companion volume, Clara said. For ornithology. We'll get you a good field guide, Emily said. Clara thought about this. Papa, she said. Yes. Don't let Garrett pick it. A pause. I'll pick it myself, Josh said. Good, Clara said. I trust your taste more than his on books. She settled back. On most things I trust Garrett more, she added, in the interests of accuracy. But books are yours. Thank you, Josh said. You're welcome, Clara said. She closed her eyes. Good night. Good night, they said. Liam's process was simpler. Song. Blanket arrangement. The specific stuffed rabbit that had to be positioned with its ears visible. 1 additional cup of water that he did not drink, but required to be present. Josh sang the song. Not perfectly. He never sang it perfectly. But he sang it the way he had learned it, from listening, from the hospital memory, from Emily humming it in the kitchen. And Liam didn't care about the imperfections, because the voice was right, and the presence was right, and the weight of the hand on his back was exactly the right weight. Liam was asleep in 4 minutes. Josh stood in the doorway looking at his son. Emily stood beside him. He looks like you, she said quietly. He has your hands, Josh said. He has your nose, she said. He has your stubbornness, he said. That one's yours, she said. A beat. That one's mine, he conceded. They pulled the door almost closed. The front porch. Tea. The December dark. The stars over Ashford. The same stars from February, the same clear cold sky, but warmer now. Or not warmer. The same temperature, but felt differently. Context changes temperature. They sat together, closer than February. Not planning it, just the natural accumulation of months, of mornings and evenings, and the specific closeness that comes from sharing a house and a kitchen and a garden and two remarkable children, and the ongoing project of saying things out loud. He said. Yeah, I need to say something. She looked at him. I'm listening, she said. He set down his cup. He turned toward her. This was different from the previous conversations. She could feel it. Not the legal framing. Not the strategy. Not the prepared exit. Just the man. Just Josh. I am afraid, he said, of asking you this. Not because I don't know what I want. I know what I want. But because the last time I stood in front of a future I wanted, I let the fear of losing it make me build walls around it until the walls became the problem. Emily looked at him. I'm telling you the fear first, he said. Because you asked me to. Because saying it out loud before I build an architecture around it is. He paused. It is the hardest thing I do, and I am learning to do it, and I am doing it now. You are, she said. I want to ask you something, he said. On your terms. In your time. With no political machinery attached. She felt her heart doing something she had spent a year pretending wasn't happening. Silas Wren's recommendation, she said. Mine, he said. Not Silas's. Mine. He reached into his coat. He produced a ring. Not elaborate, not the kind of statement a king makes to assert his kingship. Simple. A band of dark metal with a single stone that caught the porch light and held it. He held it between them. Not on her finger. Not assuming. Just present. Available. Hers if she wanted it. I spent 11 years learning to be the alpha, he said. And I spent 3 years making you invisible. And I spent 1 year trying to be worth it. He looked at her. I'm still trying. I will keep trying for as long as you'll let me. He held her gaze. Emily Hartford, he said. Will you let me try? Publicly. Formally. With both our names on it and no walls and no secrets and no Marlowe Street arrangements. Just you and me and those 2 extraordinary children and whatever comes next. The stars were very bright. The ocean was somewhere in the dark beyond the city, doing what it always did. Emily looked at the ring. She thought about the back porch of the Gloucester cabin, where she had screamed at the ocean until she had nothing left. She thought about the good silence after. She thought about precise grief and 11 minutes, and a 4-year-old who made metaphors about coat hooks, and an 18-month-old who had reached his hand toward his father in the dark and not pulled it back. She thought about Petra saying you've been knowing what to do this whole time. She thought about a door that Silas Wren had written into Pack law in 1985 and left unlocked. She thought about the 3 things she had asked for and received. She thought about what it meant to build something on the wreckage of what came before. Not despite the damage, but with full knowledge of it, with eyes open and fear spoken and walls left unbuilt. She thought about the altar. She thought about the porch. She thought about December 14th, 1 year ago, and December 14th tonight. She reached out. She took the ring. She held it. She looked at it in her palm for a long moment. Then she looked at Josh Smith, Alpha King, her children's father, the man who had built a door in his own marriage and driven north alone in the dark and learned to say, I am afraid out loud. And she said, ask me again in the spring. He blinked. The spring, he said. When the garden comes back, she said. When Clara's second botanical notebook is started. When the snow is gone. She closed her fingers around the ring. I want to say yes when the ground is soft. Not in December. He looked at her. Something moved through his face. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. Spring, he said. She held the ring. She did not give it back. He looked at her hand, closed around it, not returned. He understood. You're keeping it, he said. For now, she said. For now, he said. He looked at her. She looked at him. Josh, she said. Yeah. I'm going to say yes in the spring, she said. I want you to know that. I'm not keeping you in suspense for the sake of it. I know, he said. I just need the ground to be soft, she said. I need it to not be December. I understand, he said. Do you? He looked at her for a long moment. You walked out of a cathedral in December, he said. You drove through a December night with our children. You sat on a December porch while I stood in the snow and said all the things I should have said years ago. He paused. You've done enough in December. The spring is yours. Emily looked at the stars. She felt the ring in her palm. She felt the cold air and the porch boards and the presence of him beside her. The right warmth, the right weight, a coat on the right hook. She said, "Come inside." He came inside. April. The garden came back. Not all at once. Nothing in New England comes back all at once. But incrementally, insistently, the way living things return after cold. Clara documented every emergence. Entry 54. First crocus, northeast corner. Entry 55. Primary root activity in the experimental bed, consistent with previous year's data. Entry 56. One robin, observed for 14 minutes, behavior consistent with territory establishment. She was working on the ornithology companion volume. Josh had picked the field guide himself. It was, Clara had noted after thorough examination, an excellent choice. Liam had discovered puddles. This was a development that affected everyone in the house. On an April Saturday, when the ground was soft and the garden was coming back and Clara was in her experiment section with her notebook, and Liam was in the puddle situation, and the kitchen smelled like the coffee Emily had made, and the window was open for the first time since October. Josh came to find her. She was on the back porch, looking at the garden, at Clara on her knees examining something in the dirt with the magnifying glass, at Liam in the puddle, triumphant, at the soft April sky over Ashford. Josh came to stand beside her. He reached into his pocket. She turned toward him. He looked at her. "It's spring," he said. "It's spring," she said. He held out his hand. The ring. Still there. Still his to offer. She had kept it for 4 months. She had worn it, some nights, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, and she sat on the front porch and thought about all the December nights and all the April mornings and the specific distance between them. She had taken it off before morning. Not because she was unsure. Because she had said, "Ask me in the spring," and she had meant it, and she was fundamentally a woman who meant what she said. She took it from his hand now. She looked at it. She looked at him. "Josh Smith," she said. "Yes," he said. "You are a difficult, overprepared, walls first, fear second, coat on the wrong hook kind of man," she said. "Yes," he said. "And you are learning," she said. "Every day," he said. "And I love you," she said. "I have loved you for 4 years, and I have been precise about it and careful about it, and I walked out of a cathedral with it, and drove through December with it, and I have been keeping it like a secret even from myself, but I am," she stopped. Breathed. "I am done being a secret. Even to myself." He was very still. "Emily," he said. "Yes," she said. He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "Yes," she said. She put the ring on her own finger. Clara looked up from her notebook. She looked at the back porch. She looked at her parents. She looked at the ring. She looked back at her notebook. She wrote in entry 57, April 14th. One robin in territory. Garden active. Primary root system viable. Crocus count, 7. She paused. She wrote one more line. Also, Mama said yes. Finally, she closed the notebook. She went back to her magnifying glass. Liam, in his puddle, was unaware of the significance of the moment. He was focused on the puddle. Some things require full attention. The Atlantic was doing what it always did. Somewhere in Rockport, Petra was opening her bookshop. Somewhere in western Massachusetts, Vanessa Hartford was sitting at a council table, learning the laws of a territory she had earned. Somewhere in Northampton, Dorian Ashby was sitting in a cafe, reading the news, recalibrating for a game that had moved on without him. And in the back garden of a house on the eastern edge of Ashford, Massachusetts, in April, with the ground soft and the crocus count at 7 and a toddler in a puddle and a 5-year-old documenting the return of living things, Emily Hartford stood on her porch, with her name on the front door, with the ring on her finger, with the man beside her. Not a secret, not a ghost, not a woman being careful in the way that hiding is careful. Just Emily. Present. Visible. Exactly where she chose to be. The robin established its territory. The garden came back. The snow was gone. And in entry 57 of Clara Smith's Botanical and Ornithological Field Notebook, between the crocus count and the root system data, in the careful handwriting of a 5-year-old who had always been paying attention. Also, Mama said yes. Finally, Emily walked out of that cathedral with nothing but 2 children and a plan. And she still won. If this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Like this video if Emily deserved better from the start. And drop in the comments, Team Emily or Team Vanessa. Now tap the video on your screen, because there's a werewolf fantasy story waiting that will grab you just as hard. Don't say we didn't warn you.